have taken the lead. And this one is lifted deep to center. Going back, Newtbar. It's out of here. Home run, Miguel Amaya. Talking the other way, fairly deep. Burleson going back. He's looking up. It's gone. One popped up. All the fans on their feet as the ball lands in the glove of Dansby. And listen to the crowd. The Cubs take 3 of 4 from the Cardinals, and they win it here on Sunday Night Baseball by a final score of 6-2.
Cardinals got to feel fortunate that they snuck out that game yesterday, or it would have been a sweep.
Well, that's what it sounded like over the weekend as the Cardinals dropped 3 of 4 to the Chicago Cubs. Those highlights courtesy of ESPN. And it's a producer party here today on BK and Ferrario. Tanner Hendrickson here with Andrew Marsh, Grant Francis, and Matt Rocchio will join us in the 12 o'clock hour for the show. And boys, whew, that weekend was not ideal. And as David Cohn said it perfectly, the Cardinals should have been swept in that series if it weren't for the Cubs handing them the game on Saturday in which they won. And, Marsh, I don't know about you, but I came away from this weekend when they lost 3 of 4 to the Chicago Cubs saying to myself, I don't know if this is a playoff team for multiple reasons, but the number one is I just don't know if they are elite at anything. And the reason for that is because they've got a middling offense, they've got a middling starting pitching staff, they've got a bullpen that doesn't have swing and miss stuff. And when you combine all that together, you can lay eggs like they did over the weekend in Chicago.
Yeah, I think this it reminds me of last year. I think that nice stretch that they had, I believe it started in May of 2023. I think it's just been prolonged, right? I think everyone saw the writing on the wall of what this team actually is, and I think we're starting to finally see that come to light. And it's just unfortunate because this is like the most important time of the year, and to drop 3 of 4 just in general, but to the Cubs, who, one, are your rival team, and 2, who are right behind you in the standings, to give them more life, it's just unfortunate. This team just, they don't do anything great, and they don't jump off the page and give you a lot of hope. I mean, this is right after Tommy Pham hit a grand slam, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, the Cardinals are back. Yeah, they're back to being a middling team again. It's just super unfortunate, and I'm sick of watching it.
Yeah, I'm not excited to watch any of these games anymore. And I feel like this weekend was a perfect sample size of what this team is. At the end of the day, you're a team that you're going up against, on paper, a much worse team than you, and you keep finding ways to lose. The Cardinals weren't the better team this weekend. They just weren't. They were outplayed by what was the worst team in the division. The Cardinals helped them out of the basement this weekend, but they're showing you who they are. They're a bad team. They're finding ways to lose. Bad teams find ways to lose. They cannot find a way to win unless the game is handed to them by the other team. Mm-hmm. That's the only way they're finding wins right now, is when the other team is making mistakes and shooting themselves in the foot. So I think this weekend was a perfect example of what the Cardinals really are. They're showing you what their true colors are.
Yeah, when you look at their rotation, we agree. It's been better from 2023. Mm-hmm. But again, I've said this multiple times on this show. That was a low bar to clear in the offseason.
Oh, yeah.
And you saw their rotation over the weekend. Look, their rotation's fine. They've got a number 1 in Sonny Gray, who he pitched well on Friday. He's not the reason they lost on Friday, or on Thursday, excuse me. Then you saw Eric Fetty, who had a okay outing, really one bad inning, but that's what you expect from a number 3. A number 3 starter is going to have that one bad inning that can really change the outcome in a game. And then you look at it, you had the same with Kyle Gibson. One inning really derailed his outing. And then Michaelis at this point's a 4 and 5. Okay, so your rotation is middling so far. The bullpen was okay over the weekend. It wasn't great. You saw Fernandez give up a run last night. John King gave up a run last night. Helsley blows the game on Thursday. The bullpen is bottom 5 in terms of strikeout percentage in Major League Baseball. And the rotation is not that much higher than what the bullpen is. And then you look at the offense, guys. The offense, they went 3 for 25 with runners in scoring position over the weekend. A constant theme for the St. Louis Cardinals this season, where they just aren't producing when they get guys into scoring position. And if you told me that they went 3 for 25 in that series against the Chicago Cubs before we got into it, I would 100% said, yeah, they lose 3 of 4. Maybe they are able to get 1. And it just continues to happen. You look at what they're doing in terms of their slugging percentage. Offensively, they are 19th in slug, 18th in OPS in baseball, 18th in on-base percentage, and 13th in batting average. And to the numbers that I was talking about with the starting pitching, 22nd in starting pitching ERA. They're 7th in bullpen ERA, but 25th in that strikeout percentage. I looked this up last night because what are the things that I constantly preach on this show that I'm told are not the ways to win in baseball? Slug, baby, slug. And you've got to have swing and miss when it comes to your pitching staff. I just mentioned the Cardinals are not top 10 in strikeout percentage in their starting rotation. They're not top 10 in their relief corps, and they're not top 10 in slugging percentage. There's only been one team since 2016 that's gotten to the LCS, and that was last year's Diamondbacks. It's too hard to win in baseball this way, guys. And that's what makes it so frustrating for the St. Louis Cardinals is they don't have enough swing and miss, and they don't have the offense that can just put crooked numbers on the board without having to go station to station, and that's what you saw this weekend, and that's why they are so vulnerable.
Well, and you mentioned slug, baby, slug, and that's what the Cubs did this weekend.
Yeah.
A couple hits, boom, right there out of the park, and essentially the game is over. Now, Saturday was a different story, but again, that team gave you that game. But the reason why the Cubs had success this weekend is because they got runners on base and they hit home runs and they had solid pitching. And the Cardinals, for whatever reason, they can't. When was the last time that you saw this team put together like a really good pitching performance and the offense just really came alive? I look back to Michael McGreevy, who's not even in your rotation. I mean, that was a week ago.
Yeah.
But again, like these starters, they're not making me feel good, Grant. They're not, and every time I'm watching the game, the bases are loaded, 2 outs, and they're just not getting the job done. And thank God that they worked some counts earlier in that series. Otherwise, some of the runs wouldn't have came through.
And to that point, real quick, Marsh, BK, we were texting last night in our group chat, and he sent me these numbers, so credit to him. These are the stretches for the Cardinals so far this season. And I think it goes to show you that it plays into how their rotation is going and how their offense is going as a whole, which for the most part hasn't been all that impressive this season. They went 15-24 to start out the season. And then they went on that stretch from Mother's Day up until like the Kansas City Royals doubleheader that was kind of right before the All-Star break, where they went 33-18. And since then, they're 9-13. Since the All-Star break, I believe they're 7-8 is what they're at, or 7-9, below 500. Too much fluctuation for the St. Louis Cardinals. And the big reason for that is because what we're talking about, it's just the lack of consistency from the rotation. Or I wouldn't call it lack of consistency from the rotation. I think the lack of consistency is on the offensive side of things.
For sure.
I think with the rotation, this is kind of what you paid for. I think when you look at their rotation with a 1 in Sonny Gray, you're going to get some really good outings. And then there's a couple of those weird stretches where he goes through those blow-ups. But then when you look at Eric Fetty, Kyle Gibson, 2 number 3s, and then you've got Michaelis as a 4-5, Palante's kind of a 4-5. This is kind of what I expect. And when you have that with an inconsistent offense, you're going to go through some major ebbs and flows throughout a season.
And I think with the beginning of the season, when the rotation was looking pretty decent, we're like, oh, hey, like we actually might have something here. Those guys weren't giving you 4 to 5 innings back to back to back, right? You'd throw one guy in there and he'd go 6 or 7. You're like, oh, okay, like that we can work with that. But now when you go 3 games in a row where you're not really getting great. Now Kyle Gibson went 7 innings, but gives up 4 earned runs. When you're not having the one guy to step in and really put a stop to that is troubling, especially this late in the season.
Well, and the other thing, too, is that you had a great opportunity after that McGreevy start where he goes deep into the game. You save your bullpen a little bit. You have a great opportunity. You're set up well to go into that Cubs series, and then things fall apart. Like, the good performances are just too far between, too few and far between. That's the bottom line with this team. And when you have that, like, when you're not elite at anything, everywhere else is going to suffer when you have inconsistency. And so you can't get anything going because nobody is ever on the same page, it feels like. Nobody's ever going out and just being consistent. And when that happens, everybody else is suffering on the team and nobody can really pick up the slack. And that's why you're at about 500 and you can't get any consistency going.
Yeah, and we've talked about their inconsistency. They're down to the final 50 games of the season. And I want to play this cut from Tommy Pham that he said over the weekend. He was asked about the home stretch for the St. Louis Cardinals, and here's what Tommy Pham had to say.
You have to take it day by day, series by series. The season is winding down. Looking at the standings, it's looking like you're probably going to need about 86 wins to get in. So we have a lot of teams that are really good and ahead of us. So we're going to have to win about 30 more games, it's just to even stand a chance. So we need to catch some streaks.
That was Tommy Pham over the weekend. That audio courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest. Guys, for the Cardinals to get to that 86-win mark that Tommy Pham was talking about there, they essentially need to go 29-21 in their final 50 games. What is going to be, if they can have one, what is going to be the Cardinals' trump card to get them to that mark if they're going to make that push for the playoffs here in the home stretch?
I think it has to be hitting with runners in scoring position. I think this weekend could be one of those weekends if you are to find success in this back half of the season. It has to look like what it looked like when you lost to Milwaukee on Mother's Day, and then just switches flipped. Right now, let's forget, if I'm on the team, I'm forgetting about literally this entire weekend. I'm throwing it away. Season starts now. We got to go right now. But, fellas, we need to hit the ball. We need to hit the ball, and it starts with Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt. Those are the two guys that you're paying. We've been saying it all summer, and we'll continue to say it until the season's over. You got to rely on those guys.
Yeah, when those two guys aren't hitting, obviously that is a huge hole to fill in your lineup. It's hard to overcome that. And when you don't have any consistency anywhere else, it's almost impossible to overcome that. For me, this team is banking on the Brewers sucking. That's what it is. You're not banking on your team playing well. You're banking on the series that you have against the Brewers, them stumbling, and them having an awful rest of the season and backing your way into a division winner. To me, that's what this team is banking on, and that's not a recipe for success, but that's almost what you need at this point. If the Brewers have a strong set, rest of the season, you're done. You're done. You got to have the two more series you have against the Brewers. You have to win at least 4 or 5 of those games, and the rest of the way, the Brewers cannot be good.
Yeah, it's going to be a difficult stretch for the St. Louis Cardinals. And the thing for me, and you mentioned it, it's the offense. Yeah. I don't know if their rotation has the ceiling to be a thing that can carry you.
For sure.
But we talked about the offense coming into the season. BK was like, this is the 2015 offense. They can be a top 5 offense in the league. And look, I thought that was a little far-fetched, but I thought they could be a really good offense this season. To me, that's what it comes down to. Can Paul Goldschmidt turn the corner? I don't think he can. At this point, it almost feels like asking for too much out of him. But we've seen some little 3-4 game stretches where he gets hot. I think it is, can the offense get back to that level? Because they've got the ceiling of it. If Goldie and Arenado hit for power, then you've got that. You've got Burley, who has emerged. You've got Wilson Contreras that can be your 3-4 hitter in your lineup. Masyn Winn's a guy that's leading off. And then you've got, if Gorman ever gets things figured out, a guy that has 35 potential home run. That's the thing for me, that if it's going to be their trump card this season, it's got to be the St. Louis Cardinals offense. Okay, so we talked about the Cardinals offense. Guys, I learned over the weekend that the Cardinals really need to have more swing and miss in their rotation, and I'm going to explain that next here on 101 ESPN.
First pitch to De La Cruz. He hits a fly ball, right center. Yastrzemski has it! And Blake Snell has pitched the first no-hitter of his brilliant career.
That was Blake Snell over the weekend, no-hitting the Cincinnati Reds, as that audio was courtesy of the San Francisco Giants TV network. Dave Fleming there on the call. And Marsh, seeing that, first off, made me very excited because I can't tell you how much I was screaming from the mountaintops in the offseason that the Cardinals should sign Blake Snell. And the reason I was doing that was because he has my favorite thing among pitchers, swing and miss stuff and just electric stuff. And when a pitcher has that, and that's why I think the Cardinals, even though, look, the rotation has been better, as we talked about in our opening segment, it still is lacking some swing and miss. They're 19th in strikeout percentage at 21.3 this season. Those are the kind of guys that I like. And the reason I like going after those guys, whether it be at the trade deadline, which is why I said, hey, Jack Flaherty should probably be on the board. If we're talking about family reunions, not only bring back Tommy Pham, but bring back Jack Flaherty. And why do I say go out and sign a Blake Snell in the offseason? It's because when you have those type of starting pitchers, those kind of arms, those are the kind of guys that can do something special when they take the mound. Look at Blake Snell over the weekend against the Cincinnati Reds. Goes out, 11 strikeouts, 3 walks, throws a no-hitter. Yusei Kikuchi, my boy, man, my heart and soul, until those 8 starts where he really struggled. Then I kind of backed away. But my heart and soul, Yusei Kikuchi. His first start with the Houston Astros, what's he do? He goes out and shoves. 5 2/3 innings pitched, 11 strikeouts. Jack Flaherty, who I mentioned, what's he do in his Dodgers debut? 6 innings, no earned runs, 7 strikeouts. Meanwhile, when you look at what the Cardinals were targeting, and look, I do like the Eric Fetty trade. I'm not trying to say they should not have traded for Eric Fetty. They got a steal by giving up truly nothing to go get Eric Fetty and Tommy Pham.
Right.
But Eric Fetty can have these outings that you saw over the weekend, where in his Cardinals debut, what's he do? 5 innings, 6 hits, 5 earned runs, 4 strikeouts. When you have the stuff of a Blake Snell, when you have the stuff of a Jack Flaherty or Yusei Kikuchi, those are the guys that I want because they can do something special anytime that they take the mound.
And to your point about Blake Snell, he's a guy that steps up his game when the season progresses into the back half of it. You look at his July numbers, the guy only gave up 2 earned runs. He has 41 strikeouts since the beginning of July. Like, to your point, strikeouts are key, man, especially if you want to be a World Series contender. Now, the San Francisco Giants, by all means, I don't believe they're a World Series contender, but that is a guy that can help your team. And the Cardinals, they obviously they don't have that. Eric Fetty, like you said, that's fine. I don't expect his first outing as a Cardinal to be every outing by any means. I think he'll be way
so he's
better.
Not going to be like a 90 ERA guy?
Well, hopefully not. That'd be after the second inning, I'll take that Eric Fetty.
Yeah, that guy was pretty good.
That was fine. But again, you don't have that swing and miss guy. Anthony Stalter on the fast lane 2 weeks ago was talking about before the trade deadline even hit, maybe the Cardinals should bring in a guy like Blake Snell. He's I believe he has an option.
Yeah.
That could have been an option. Jack Flaherty, we talked about it till, we were blue in the face. Bring that guy back. I don't care what's going on with the front office. Like, do you want to win? This guy gives you the best, one of the best opportunities to do that. And we're seeing it happen with other teams. And that's just the reality of the situation. And it's unfortunate, but are we shocked? I'm not.
No, not at all. And I think when you mention kind of, the Jack Flaherty, Blake Snell bringing in these guys with options. Look, I'm not trying to deny that you need to have an Eric Fetty or a Kyle Gibson in your rotation. Even honestly, Miles Michaelis. Even though I've had my frustrations with Miles Michaelis this season, if you're telling me I'm going to get an innings eater that's as my number 4, number 5 guy that brings kind of that veteran presence to the rotation group and can go out there. And last night, notwithstanding, he's had a couple of blowout games like that. But we've seen he went toe-to-toe with Paul Skeens, who's arguably the best pitcher in Major League Baseball as a rookie. You need those kind of guys. I'm not trying to deny that. You do need an Eric Fetty in your rotation who's got decent strikeout stuff. He's at about 8 strikeouts per 9. That's kind of what Kyle Gibson is. The problem for the Cardinals is you need those kind of guys in their role, which is the 3, 4, and 5. And the problem with the rotation, even post-deadline, is the fact of the matter that Eric Fetty slots in as the 2. It's just like the lineup a couple of years ago where it was, is Paul DeJong really a 5-hitter? Well, no, he's probably more of a 7-hitter, but he's hitting 5 because the lineup's not constructed well enough. And that's the biggest thing for me. When I saw those guys pitch over the weekend, I was like, okay, Sonny Gray can do that, But who's the other guy that's going to be that guy for St. Louis?
Right, you have like 4 of those guys when you really only need maybe, I'd say 2.
2, maybe 3.
Maybe 3. I'd go 3 if, if you're not like a legit World Series contender. But you have 4, hell, even 5 of those guys, if a few of them are healthy. It's not exciting by any means.
Well, and what you were saying, Tanner, kind of reminds me about how I talk about the Blues defense. You have players that are playing 1 or 2 slots too far ahead of where they should be playing. And I don't want to be too critical of the Cardinals because I thought their trade deadline was pretty great. Like bringing in Eric Fetty and Tommy Pham for basically just Tommy Edman, it's a great trade. But at the end of the day, and I don't want to be too down on Eric Fetty after 1 start because it was 1 start and he had a good outing aside from 1 inning. But the problem when you have so many pitch to contact guys is that every one of those guys, every time they go out there, they run the risk of having that 1 blow up inning. Yeah. Whereas if you're that swing and miss guy, typically, even if you give up a home run, the bases aren't going to be loaded. If you're a pitch to contact guy, as we saw with Eric Fetty this weekend, the bases could be loaded. You could have 2 on and you let up a home run. They have too many of these guys that are pitch to contact and they don't have enough swing and miss, and that's what's happening. You're getting these innings where they blow up, and maybe, the majority of their start is good, but the 1 inning will ruin them.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about Eric Fetty, it is that 1 inning that you're referring to. It's just the 1 inning where they just don't have the swing and miss stuff. They can go out. I mean, Gibson had 7 or 8 strikeouts. He was solid over the weekend. Those guys can rack up some decent strikeout numbers. But to your point, the reason that they kind of are categorized, we were asked last week on the show. How do you kind of categorize these guys? Number 3 kind of has what you're talking about. Those blow up innings, and that's fine. Again, you need those guys. The problem for the Cardinals is they have 2 or 3 of them. And while we're talking about someone that the Cardinals acquired at the trade deadline, Eric Fetty, I was thinking of this over the weekend, guys. As I'm watching Tommy Pham, who the Cardinals acquired in that Eric Fetty trade, man, Tommy Pham has been exactly what the Cardinals needed. He's coming in. He's producing so far. Granted, it's only been 6 games so far, but he's got a 381 average and a 1,100 OPS. And I was thinking to myself watching him because he's now kind of in an everyday role, especially now that Michael Siani's injured. We'll talk more about that in the 12 o'clock hour today. Can Tommy Pham work his way into the Cardinals' plans in 2025? Or is he just no matter what for you, he's just a 2024 rental?
I wouldn't mind it. I like the passion that he brings. I like the grit that he brings. I think this team, now the standings and the record might not show it in these 6 games, but I feel like that clubhouse just has a different vibe to it. And if they do put things together, I think it will start with him and guys like Matt Carpenter and these veteran guys that you brought in. But Tommy Pham, he just brings something that makes you want to wake up and go play baseball. And if you can keep that guy for another year, especially with these younger players developing and they all seem to really like this dude, why not bring him back? I mean, you might have some questions in the outfield, but hell, we've had questions in the outfield for what seems like the last 10 years.
Just be your normal St. Louis Cardinals offseason.
So I say bring the guy back. Who cares? And if you have another terrible year, then trade him at the deadline and get something for him.
Yeah, especially considering the amount of time we've spent talking about the locker room or the clubhouse and just the overall vibes in the clubhouse and the leadership. I would 100% consider bringing Tommy Pham back, especially since you're probably not going to have Brandon Crawford back next year.
Oh, no?
So shockingly, I know.
But he was 5 for 7.
Yeah, against Hector Neris.
Maybe we should give him more
flow.
pinch hit opportunities.
Okay.
Maybe that's the key.
Relax.
But for next season, I have no problem bringing back Tommy Pham. If he's going to produce as he is and stay consistent with that, and he's also going to bring that element of leadership, I think that's just what this clubhouse could need.
Well, and the key thing is he can hit left-handed pitching, which apparently the rest of the team can't. So I'm going to assume that if that trend continues this year, it probably will continue into next year, unless these players just magically remember how to hit against lefties. I think you would need a guy like that. But that's just my opinion.
And at the same time, it's not going to break the bank either, which is obviously important to this team.
Yes.
Yeah,
so.
Especially because who knows what payroll could look like next year with the RSN situation for the Cardinals. It's fascinating. I think he continues to produce, and I understand I'm probably getting out over my skis over 6 games. But we talk about, the Cardinals in their identity, it's almost as if they've taken on Tommy Pham's identity, not that Tommy Pham is molded into the Cardinals' identity, and just the fact of the matter that if he continues to produce, I think next year Jordan Walker's the guy in right field, but at least if you were to bring back Tommy Pham and you move Burleson to first base, who would take over for Paul Goldschmidt, who would walk, then I think there's a chance you should consider, at least if he continues to produce, Tommy Pham as maybe that insurance guy, just in case Jordan Walker is either A, not ready for the big leagues at the start of next season, or B, would happen to go through the same struggles that we saw this season. That's Andrew Marsh. That's Grant Francis. I'm Tanner Hendrickson. It's the producer party filling in for BK and Ferrario today. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get into a game of questions and answers. But coming up next, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters here on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Not a good weekend for the Cardinals. They lost 3 of 4 in Chicago in that series. Not only did they lose on the scoreboard, they also lost Michael Siani, who was placed on the 10-day IL with an oblique strain. They called up Victor Scott II from Memphis. We'll get into that in the 12 o'clock hour here on BK and Ferrario. Today, the Cardinals look to bounce back. They'll take on the Mets at Busch Stadium. It'll be Andre Palante going up against Sean Manaea for the Mets, and first pitch from Busch Stadium will be at 4:15. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Let's dive into some NFL quick hitters here on the producer party as Tanner Hendrickson alongside Andrew Marsh and Grant Francis as we're filling in for BK and Ferrario today. Guys, I saw over the weekend the NFL's been slowly but surely releasing their top 100 players for the upcoming NFL season, which was voted on by the players based on last year's results. And they released the top 10 over the weekend. And I'm curious your guys' thoughts. Who do you think is a little high on this list? Who do you think maybe doesn't belong and should be replaced with somebody else? This was the top 10. Max Crosby, Travis Kelce, TJ Watt, Trent Williams, Chris Jones, Myles Garrett, Patrick Mahomes at 4, Christian McCaffrey 3, Lamar Jackson 2, and Tyreek Hill at number 1.
Oh, geez. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes at 4 stands out.
Is it the multiple Super Bowls that make him kind of feel a little low?
I think so. But when you look at this list, it's voted on by the players, so I have to change my perspective on this. I'm thinking, okay, who are the toughest players to play against? Tyreek Hill is probably, I'd say, just next to, you can't guard the guy.
No.
Like, you can't stop him. If he just wanted to run past you, he would. He could every single time. They could just do a Hail Mary every single time, he'd run right past you. Lamar Jackson, I mean, he dual threat quarterback. Guy can throw the ball, guy can run the ball. Christian McCaffrey, guy's been one of the best running backs in the league for God knows how long. And then you have Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, I think, is special in different ways. When it really comes down to it, he performs. But these other guys, from like an athletic build standpoint and trying to cover these players, I can understand why 3 of those players are above Patrick Mahomes.
I guess I could understand Tyreek Hill being number 1, because if you think about it in the sense of, Tyreek Hill and how far of a gap there is between him being the best receiver in the league and the second best, I think that's a pretty far gap. Like, Tyreek Hill is just so far ahead of everybody else in the terms of his position. But the thing that got me was Patrick Mahomes being below Lamar Jackson. Like, I just don't see how that works. And Lamar Jackson is a great player. And I would say the weapons are similar. Like, neither team has significant weapons outside of their quarterback. But I can't put Patrick Mahomes below Lamar Jackson. And it's hard to argue with the players because, like, we're just 3, 20s, in our 20s that are talking about NFL players. Like, how do we critique their opinions?
I don't know about you. I've never played football in my life. I just love the game.
Mom thought I'd get killed if I played football, so I didn't get to play football.
But at the same time, when you look at the track record and especially the playoffs in both of those players' careers, I don't know how you can put Patrick Mahomes below Lamar Jackson.
That's why I think it comes down to, like, an athletic build and what those players possess from, like, an athletic standpoint. Now, Patrick Mahomes, he can run the ball, he can throw the ball, he can do all these things, but he's like a pocket he's in the pocket for most of the time.
Me and Grant were talking about this in the office prior to the show today, and the thing, I can understand how you can look at Lamar and say, okay, here's why he belongs in the top 5.
Yeah.
It's because we've seen it. He's won multiple MVPs. He can throw the ball in the pocket if he has to. And the thing that makes him so different is he's almost like a cheat code because he can get out of the pocket and he can run. And you can design your offense around that, kind of like we've seen at the college game. But the thing for me is when I look at Patrick Mahomes, sure, he's not as athletically gifted as Lamar Jackson. Guys, there's a reason he has multiple Super Bowls.
100%.
And it's not the fact that he's getting carried by his team.
Nope.
Look, he's had great weapons for those Super Bowls. Last year, I thought was the worst cast he's had around him in his time in Kansas City, and he still won the damn thing. So Mahomes, for me, would be, I think, number 1. I think Tyreek would be too because of what you said of, hey, man, I don't know how you guard that guy, especially when Miami's doing the whole cheat motion thing and he gets a running start. Good luck. And then CMC for me would probably be at number 3. Now, speaking of these quarterbacks, because of this list, here's how the players voted on the top 5 quarterbacks. And I find this interesting. At number 5, they had Dak Prescott. Number 4, Jalen Hurts. Number 3, Josh Allen. 2, Patrick Mahomes. And 1, Lamar Jackson. Find it interesting that you don't see a C.J. Stroud up there, a Joe Burrow. And look, I get it. Bad year for him last year. Was dealing with injuries. And you don't see a Matt Stafford. I think there's a chance you could argue could potentially be in this top 5. What are your thoughts on the top 5 quarterbacks?
Yeah, well, I got to keep the same energy for this list as I did for the previous one. I think when you look at these players, Josh Allen, again, he can run the ball. He can throw the ball 100 plus yards if he wanted to. And the guy's got a cannon of an arm. Jalen Hurts is an interesting one just because I think he took a step back this past season. I don't know if the players are considering what do they call it when they would QB sneak? The tush push.
Tush push.
The tush push. I don't know if they're considering that. Now, that is like unstoppable. And I don't know what it's going to look like this year.
Especially with Kelsey retiring.
Exactly. Dak Prescott, I hate the Cowboys, but he's a good quarterback. I don't know if he's in my top 5. But again, like these are the guys that they're playing against him. So who am I to say that he shouldn't be a part of this list? I would consider Matthew Stafford to be in that top 5. I think I would replace Jalen Hurts with Matthew Stafford.
I don't know. I'm not biased as a Rams fan.
I cannot have Josh Allen in the top 3 on this list.
That's fair.
If you're top 2 in interceptions thrown, you can't be a top 3 quarterback in the league. Like, it's just as simple as that. Like, you can't throw 18 interceptions last season, almost lead the league in interceptions, and then be number 3 on this list right next to Patrick Mahomes.
I mean, I agree with you. I really think it comes down to, like, athleticism and, like, how hard it is to play against these guys.
I mean, just because you're the most athletic doesn't mean you're the best player at that position.
No, that's absolutely fair. Absolutely. I would still have Josh Allen in the top 5. Would you keep him in the top 5?
I don't think I would have him ahead of, like, Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, but when you think of the NFL, like, forget who's the top, like, who are the most important quarterbacks in the league? Does that change your list?
I mean, if we're going most important, Lamar and Mahomes are 1 and 2. Yeah. I do agree on that.
The funny thing is Allen, if we're going off of that, Allen rises this year compared to like years past.
Yeah.
Because he had better weapons in years past, and now you've got the Bills going through the retool, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. That's what would change it for me. But I would want to see what he looks like before that, because what Grant's talking about, his interceptions, that could become a major problem again this year.
For sure.
Because in years past, you could get away with it. Why? Because, you had better offense. Now we'll see. Now we'll see what the Bills look like. I think he's probably a top 5 quarterback just because his talent, but I would probably have him like 4th, maybe like tied for 5th with Matt Stafford, but that's just where I come out on Josh Allen. But I think you're totally fair to have your critiques of Josh Allen and his interception problem so far.
I still look at this Jalen Hurts at 4. I love Jalen Hurts. I think he's a great quarterback. I just don't know if he is a top 4 quarterback in the league.
See, I think that's just recency bias because of how poorly the season ended for the Eagles this past season. Like, if you go back, let's say middle of the season last year when the Eagles were rolling and they were just coming off of a loss in the Super Bowl, like, you probably wouldn't have the same tune on Jalen Hurts. I think recency bias plays a lot into the negativity surrounding Jalen Hurts right now.
Yeah, and I wonder with him, how much is in his coaching situation? Because last year really raised some eyebrows for me for Sirianni in Philadelphia in the reports that came out in the offseason that the GM had to hire his offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. That's a little alarming. But granted, same could be said for Dak. I think Dak's a good quarterback. Mike McCarthy, not a good head coach. One more thing I want to get into here, guys, in NFL Quick Hitters before we get to questions and answers on the other side. Do you think Brandon Ayuk's going to get traded before we get to the season? Because there's a lot of buzz coming out of San Francisco that Ayuk is the one that has all the leverage, and there's some speculating that a trade could happen here in the near future. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think so. I think the 49ers are in a position where they need him because their players are so prone to be injured. If George Kittle goes down, if Debo goes down, like these guys go down every single year. Like, who is going to catch? Even their rookie draft pick, Ricky Pearsall, got injured. He hadn't even played a game yet. Like, who's going to catch the ball? Like, Brock Purdy's a good quarterback, but I'm in the camp where he probably needs a few players around him to be good. And we saw that last year when a lot of those guys were out. They started to lose some games. Now, he did have one really good game. They lost the game because of a missed field goal. But who are you going to throw the ball to? Brandon Ayuk has proven that he can be a dependable guy. You need to keep that guy. I don't think they trade him.
See, but part of me also, if I'm a player on that team and there's a guy in the locker room that does not want to be there and you're having issues, like that could also cause issues within the locker room and cause more issues than keeping him, even though he's an extremely talented player and obviously adds to that roster. But, like, you've still got Kittle, you've still got Debo, you've still got CMC. Like, you've still got a lot of weapons on that team. I don't know. Like, I could understand why the 49ers would want to end up trading him because I wouldn't want it to become a situation where he becomes a cancer in the locker room.
Yeah, the thing for me, because all these reports are saying, Ayuk's got the leverage, Ayuk's got the leverage. What leverage does he have?
That's what I was thinking, too.
If he doesn't get a new deal, what's he going to do? Sit and watch football games?
Go ahead and do it.
He's going to get fined. He's going to lose money. Chris Jones is the last guy we saw go into a season and sit out for I think it was a game, and then he signed his new deal. I'm just not buying that he's got leverage. No. If I'm the San Francisco 49ers, BK's been saying this, and I'm 100% with him. You're okay, sit out. We're just going to keep fighting you. When you show up, we're going to play, and we'll go from there. I'm not buying that he has any leverage. Guys, real quick, before we get out of here, if he is available, who's the one team you'd like to see him traded to?
Well, I would love him to see. I'd love to see him as Minnesota Viking. I'm just biased, though. I have no idea if Jordan Addison is going to play every single game. Man, he put him and JJ together. Oh, man, that'd be fantastic. But
JJ, you got Sam Darnold, man.
I was talking about Justin Jefferson. Oh, but those two.
I thought you were talking about JJ McCarthy.
Hey, seen some videos. He's looked pretty good.
Here's what I will
say.
How
it goes, but
I'd say Washington.
Washington. Well, yeah. I mean, he's been throwing videos of their practice and whatnot on Instagram. It would make sense. But if you're in that position, I wouldn't trade him to the team that he wants to go to. Why would you do that?
You'd be sending him to like New England, where he really doesn't want to be. I love it.
Not to play the BK role here.
Oh boy.
But if the Chiefs were able to trade for that guy, they might be unstoppable.
Stop it. I don't want to see that. I think their offense is already good enough, even if they did.
I mean, it is. Imagine if they added Brandon Ayuk.
I think it was last week I said, they could be a top 3 offense in the NFL. I truly believe that when you look at their weapons that they've got.
I mean, I don't disagree with you, but then imagine if you add another weapon to that roster.
Yeah.
Especially because receiver might be the area where they're lightest the most.
Yeah.
Like, you are just really adding to your strengths at that point.
Yeah.
Real quick before we head into break, I think a team that would absolutely need him is the LA Chargers.
That's
because
a good one.
I have zero idea who's going to catch a football because I've seen videos of Quentin Johnson continuing to do what he did from 2023, and that was drop the ball. So I have no idea how that team is going to win games.
Yeah,
I guess they're just going to have to run the ball.
Yeah. They're going to be the old Harbaugh offense, baby.
Yeah.
Run, baby, run. It's 11:50, your Clarkson Jewelers time check here on 101 ESPN. Coming up in 15 minutes on the producer party, what is the Cardinals' plan in center field with the Michael Siani injury? I know Grant Francis wanted to see the Cardinals call up somebody not named Victor Scott. We'll discuss that in 15 minutes. But coming up next, we're going to play a game of questions and answers. Get your questions in to the Air Comfort Service text line 314-399-9646. And we'll answer those for you next year on 101 ESPN. Time for questions and answers here on the Producer Party alongside Andrew Marsh of the Fast Lane, Swiss Army Knife in the building, Grant Francis. I'm Tanner Hendrickson as we are filling in for BK and Ferrario today. Make sure you get your questions into the Air Comfort Service text line 314-399-9646 as we begin a game of questions and answers. And guys, I want to start with this from the 314. Do you guys believe that Riley O'Brien can become an X factor for the Cardinals bullpen this season?
I think he can. I mean, right now, you need as many arms as you can possibly get right now. I mean, this is crunch time right now for the Cardinals, and this is a guy that I believe, had pretty high expectations for heading into the offseason, or heading into the season, that is. But I think he can potentially give you a jolt, and, I mean, there's a reason why you brought him in, so let's see what he can do. And, again, you can't go wrong with having another arm, right? And this was a guy who was originally in your plans. And so if he can be what Mo thought he could be, I think they'll be fine. Granted, there could be people out there that would say the complete opposite if he ends up being what Mo thinks he could be. So I hope so, man. I'm just in a place right now where I'm so frustrated. I just need some life, and hopefully this guy can provide some.
I would say, at this point in the season when the bullpen is starting to falter a little bit, they were so good early on, but it just seems like maybe they're getting low on gas in the tank right now. A fresh arm at this point in the season would be instrumental for the bullpen. So if he can come in and be serviceable and, have some innings out of the bullpen, I think they could be huge for the bullpen at this point in the season.
Yeah, he's interesting because we talked about stuff in our 11-15 segment. I think he's got good stuff to come out of the bullpen. The problem is, and I think you saw this in his one game when he pitched, and look, one game, small sample size, but it's kind of carried over into his rehab assignment where he's appeared in 6 games. He's walked 4 in 6 innings pitched and has allowed 5 hits, but he also has 4 strikeouts. Mm-hmm. The thing with Riley O'Brien is is his control going to be there? I think he's got the stuff.
Yeah.
But, that stuff doesn't really matter if you're not doing the most important part, which is hitting the strike zone. And that's why I think, could he be in the second half here, your version of what you had in Luis Garcia, provide some stuff, see if you've got some swing and miss, just got to see if you can work on his command. I think it's what they were hoping Roycroft would become, and as we're saying, it just did not work with Chris Roycroft. I think there's a chance he could potentially become that arm for them.
Well, and that's the thing. You can't come into this situation and start walking guys. This is the last thing that the Cardinals need, because if you can't go out there and provide a solid inning and a solid outing, you're just taxing the bullpen even more, because then you got to bring in another dude, and then that messes up the plans for potentially the rest of the series or the series after that. And so if they're going to make him have a decent role, he needs to perform. And I know that's tough to say because he hasn't pitched in the majors yet this year, but he, like you said, Tanner, he's got to have that control. Otherwise, it's not going to be good for the Cardinals.
Yeah. From the 314, do you guys consider Nolan Gorman to be expendable at the end of the season?
Yeah. I hate to say that, but what are you going to get for him if you trade him?
I think you'd get a pretty good starter.
You think so?
I don't think you could go Gorman straight up for a number 2.
You'd have to add something.
You probably got to maybe add in a prospect. But there are a lot of teams that could look at Nolan Gorman and dream. I am starting to lean towards he's becoming expendable. And we'll get further into this at 12:30 when I think Matt Rocky will be joining us in studio. But I am leaning towards he's becoming expendable. And I've been the guy that's been saying all along, hey, you got to keep playing him. See if he can get hot. Because if he gets hot, he can carry you in the postseason. He could go on a Jock Peterson-esque run, a Jorge Soler-esque run. But the thing and the reason why I'm starting to say, okay, he might be more expendable, one, you can play Brendan Donovan at second, kind of free up another outfield spot. But the other thing for me is, though he does go through his ebbs and flows, I don't think his peaks have been as long-lasting and as effective as you were hoping for as they were compared to a year ago. And that's why I think he's expendable potentially in the offseason and could really get you something really good if you were able to trade him.
Man, I will say, though, I think the Cardinals would have a really tough time sending him away, given the track record of some of these trades burning them in the past. I could just see Nolan Gorman being that player that goes off and just starts mashing home runs elsewhere. Like that's what it feels like that would end up that's what the result would be of a trade of Nolan Gorman.
I think right now is an important time to establish what Nolan Gorman is in your organization. Like, you're in a playoff push right now. We mentioned it at the beginning of the show. Slug, baby, slug. We need some pop. That's what this guy can provide, and you're not playing him. And you had a solid opportunity to pinch hit, have him pinch hit over the weekend, and I think that said a lot. Maybe the numbers didn't bear it out. 5 for 7 for Brandon Crawford heading into that bat, but that could have been an opportunity where Nolan Gorman steps up, lefty off the bench, and he wasn't put in that situation because of the way he's been hitting. So I don't know what you do with the guy if he's going to continue to play like this. But you got to give him some runway, otherwise you'll never find out. You could say the same thing about Alec Burleson last year. We don't really know what he would be. You give him some runway, he's playing, and he's looking pretty damn good. Hopefully the same thing can be said for Nolan Gorman.
See, and that's the problem, I think, is that for Gorman, you don't have the everyday playing time right now. So you don't have the opportunity as of right now to go out there and fix your wrongs. And that's why whenever players like him go elsewhere and they do get an opportunity every single day, all of a sudden they're all-stars. Well, that's because they had a chance to work it out. And right now, you have a team that's not good. They're losing games. But at the same time, you're not letting your players work out their problems on the field. So, you have the worst of both worlds right now. You're not winning games, but you're also not putting him in the lineup because you're too concerned about not winning games.
Right. His development's taken a shot for sure.
Yeah, that's Andrew Marsh. That's Grant Francis. I'm Tanner Hendrickson. Thanks for submitting your questions into the Air Comfort Service text line, 314-399-9646. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get into a game of in or out. But coming up next, big injury for the St. Louis Cardinals. I can't believe I'm saying that. Would never thought that coming into the season. But a big injury to Michael Siani. Strained his right oblique. What is the Cardinals' plans in center field here for the next month or so while he's out? We'll discuss that next here on 101 ESPN.
Nootbaar in for Siani. Jim Hayes, what's the deal with Siani?
Chip, you were right. Something was going on with Siani. According to the Cardinals, he was removed from the game with right oblique tightness. That's all we have, right oblique tightness for Siani.
That's what it sounded like over the weekend on Bally Sports Midwest as Michael Siani strained his right oblique and was placed on the 10-day IL yesterday. And the corresponding move for the St. Louis Cardinals was to recall one of their top prospects, the opening day center fielder, Victor Scott II. And guys, I don't necessarily mind the idea to call up Victor Scott II. You know, he'd been on a little bit of a tear lately in the minor leagues. You look at his last 11 games, he talked about it when he got called back up of, Ryan Ludwig, friend of the show, talked about how he went to a different stance, and, the numbers show a little bit of a change. 279 batting average, 3 homers, 11 RBIs, and a 939 OPS, along with 9 walks and 8 strikeouts. Victor Scott II been playing pretty well in his recent stretch down in the minor leagues. But I know my guy BK wasn't necessarily thrilled with the idea of Victor Scott being the one to call up. He would have rather seen someone like a Thomas Saggese bring up a right-handed bat, can have him come into these situations and fill in for Tommy Pham on the bench, who now looks like he's going to be an everyday player. And you just go with Nootbaar or Tommy Pham in center field to fill that void while Michael Siani's out, which is probably going to be 4 to 6 weeks. We saw Matt Carpenter and Lars Nootbaar strain their obliques this season. Carp missed, I believe it was 5 weeks, and Nootbaar was 6 weeks. This is a big absence for the St. Louis Cardinals because he's one of the best defensive center fielders in the entire sport, +9 in defensive runs saved, +13 in outs above average, which is 4th in Major League Baseball. How do you guys feel about the way that the St. Louis Cardinals are approaching this by calling up Victor Scott and not going with a Thomas Saggese or another one of their young kids down in the minor leagues?
I don't mind it because Victor Scott II, he has that same profile as Michael Siani. Speed, right? The hitting is probably going to be similar. Although Michael Siani, his bat has been playing very well lately, so you're going to miss a little bit of that at the bottom of your order. Hopefully Victor Scott can be similar in the same conversation as Michael Siani hitting-wise. I think he'll be fine in the outfield. You need a center field. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not really too comfortable with Lars Nootbaar in center field.
I'm with you.
I don't mind it. It's okay. Watching, he made a few good plays in the World Baseball Classic when he was playing for Team Japan. He's fine. I've also seen some plays when he was in right field this year where I'm like, oh, gosh, that doesn't look good. So I don't know if I want him playing center field. I don't know if I want Tommy Pham playing center field either. But the problem with bringing up Victor Scott and Tommy Pham moving into your everyday lineup is that you're missing that right-handed bat off the bench, the thing that you traded for. And now he's in your starting lineup, which is fine. He's been hitting the ball really well, but you're still missing that. So I think there's 2 ways to look at it. I don't mind it, but if they went a different direction, I think I would like that a little bit better. Now, who that would be, that is, I think, a bigger question than the question of should they have brought up Victor Scott if they were to bring up somebody else.
Yeah, I don't mind going with Victor Scott, and we're going to get Grant's thoughts here in a minute because I know he's fired up and wanted to see somebody else brought up to the big league club. I don't necessarily mind going with Victor Scott because we talked about in our opening segment today, the Cardinals they're not elite at anything. Mm-hmm. I will say one thing that they've gotten better at where they've been, I'd say they're good, maybe not great, is their defense. Yeah. And they said from day one, hey, we've got to be a better defensive club. And that's why I am with you. Lars Nootbaar in center field, if I had to do it for a game and you had to do a couple spot starts like they did yesterday where, let's not put Victor Scott in a bad spot where he's going up against lefties. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm okay with giving some spot starts to Lars Nootbaar in center field. I don't feel great about it over a sustained run. No. Same with Tommy Pham. I know he was doing it with the White Sox. He was a -7 in defensive run save. Mm-hmm. Essentially, he was a center fielder for the White Sox because the White Sox suck. Yeah. I don't mind calling up Victor Scott, but I felt like there probably needed to be another move with this of bringing in another right-handed bat because of what you were mentioning with Tommy Pham. He's now in that starting lineup. He's now a guy that is probably getting emotional over here. He's probably a guy that is going to be starting for you in left or right field during this stretch without Michael Siani. Okay, well, as we saw last night, you need a right-handed bat off the bench. I know Ollie Marmol said over the weekend, well, there's just not going to be those opportunities. No, there are going to be those opportunities potentially for them. I think when you look at this, I would have liked to see a Victor Scott plus maybe a Thomas Sajaci comes up, and you send down maybe even a Nolan Gorman. Even though I don't think there's much for Gorman to prove at the minor league level, or instead of sending him down, you DFA Brandon Crawford. Mm-hmm. What is Brandon Crawford's role? He's got like 5 plate appearances since the All-Star break. You're just wasting a roster spot, essentially. Right. So instead, bring up a right-handed bat that can potentially help you. He can play shortstop in a pinch if you need it because something is up with Masyn Winn. I just feel like, okay, you can do the Victor Scott move, but I don't know if it can be by itself because you do need a right-handed bat that can be on the bench to help you out, and you need that elite defense in center field because you can't replace Michael Siani, right? But Victor Scott's probably the best option to get you close to his defensive level.
And you need it with his pitching staff, too, because we talked about it earlier. The swing and miss is not there. Right. It's all contact, baby. And so you need someone patrolling center field who has speed because the guys on the corners, there's some speed there. But if Alec Burleson's out there and his defense has been a lot better than last year, but if he's out there, it just looks a little bit different. So to have somebody out there that can cover all the ground, that is important. And I like your idea of bringing somebody else up, right-handed bat, that helps the offense because we know this team needs that. And Grant, I think there's somebody that you would have liked to bring up that potentially could help that offense.
I can understand why the Cardinals wanted to bring up Victor Scott in this situation, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying about if you're bringing up the player that profiles as similarly as possible to Michael Siani, that would be Victor Scott. Mm-hmm. So I can understand where they're coming from. But I was sitting back last night and thinking about it, like this team needs a jolt to the system. Like this team needs something. You have a guy that was just the number 1 prospect on your team, last year, 2 years ago? You had teams salivating over him at the trade deadline. Half the league was inquiring about him. Why are you not calling up Jordan Walker in this situation? I really think that, you talk about the right-handed bat. That's needed. He fills that. I mean, I know the defense isn't going to be as great as maybe, obviously Michael Siani, same said for Victor Scott.
But be Tommy Pham in the outfield, to your point there defensively.
But the potential of that bat, if he can get going and kick in his potential here, that could really jolt this team and add some offense in a big way to this lineup that really needs it. And you're talking about looking at the rest of the season and what's really going to benefit you more. A bat like Jordan Walker, if it comes alive, or the defense of Victor Scott. And I don't want to sound like I'm down on Victor Scott. I am genuinely excited to see how much he has improved from his first stint here early in the season. This is nothing against Victor Scott. But if I'm thinking about the potential of what this move could do for the Cardinals, I think the potential high end is much higher for Jordan Walker than it would be for Victor Scott at this point.
I think the issue you run in is when you bring him up is where is he going to play and how often is he going to play for? Is he going to be your everyday right fielder?
You got to have him every day. If you're calling him up, you got to have him every day.
Where does Newbar play then?
In this scenario, he's in center because Scott's not up here. And I think then you've kind of got this outline of how you want to play this because you've now got Jordan Walker in right. You can go Newt in center, and then you can go with Tommy Pham in left field, and Alec Burleson's your DH. And then you can kind of change things around a little bit against maybe a left-handed starting pitcher. And to the point, the reason I kind of like this Victor Scott call-up is the defense, number 1. But 2 is the fact that he's been playing well. We mentioned that. Yeah. Well, the same can be said for Jordan Walker. It looks like, and I think this is why the Cardinals are hesitant to do this right now. I think this is a conversation, if you see him continue this hot streak for the next 2 weeks maybe, is when you look at what he's done in his last 11 games, 326 average. He has now got a OPS in the thousands with 3 homers, 5 RBIs, 5 doubles in his last 11 games on this road trip that the Memphis Redbirds have been on. I think the reason that you're a little hesitant to call up Jordan Walker, and it's why I'm not necessarily, I like the idea, I'm open-minded to the idea, but the reason I'm not so much in on it is because I want to see more success from Jordan Walker. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure that what I'm seeing right now isn't like what I've seen from Paul Goldschmidt at the big league level, where I go, Goldie's back, look at these 5 games, and then he finished the Cubs series 0 for 11. That's why I'm a little hesitant to call him up, but you're 100% right.
But you could say the same thing about Victor Scott as well.
The difference is Victor Scott, why he's here is his defense.
Yeah, it's not his bat.
It's not his bat. His bat, it's kind of like at the beginning of the season where it was, why is Victor Scott up? Well, you're hoping for elite defense, which I think he was a little lackluster when we saw him. We'll see if it's improved now that he's up here with the big league club again. But it wasn't necessarily okay, whatever we get out of his bat was a bonus. And I think that's where they're at right now. Mm-hmm. They're still operating with at least one, what I'd call a dead spot in the order, which is we've got this one guy here that's going to start, that's going to be just defensive-minded. That's Victor Scott. I don't necessarily mind that because I think the next time you call up Jordan Walker, and you could be right, Grant, it could be like he is ready to go right now. But the next time he comes up is when it's sink or swim time. And I think that's why you're seeing the Cardinals be overly cautious of doing it, okay, we want to make sure this isn't just a 2-week stretch. We want to see that this is a actual, okay, he's figured it out. Let's give him a little more time. I think this conversation really becomes interesting on Jordan Walker. If Victor Scott is not hitting, which he wasn't early on, and the offense continues to kind of scuffle, and now you've seen, say, in a week and a half from now, like August 18th, August 20th, somewhere in that range, okay, now how is Jordan Walker look? That's when, to me, this is really, okay, now it's time for Walker to be up here on the big league club.
You brought up the whole sink or swim thing. I think some people could argue that the time is right now because you could be out of the playoff race in a week.
That's fair.
You don't have time.
But we've seen that from the
balance.
Cardinals, though. They have the idea of let's be patient. Let's see how things work itself out. They could go 500, though, this upcoming week, and they'd be right back in the same spot as they are right now. Then maybe they make that decision. I don't know, but as a fan, losing 3 of 4, I'm looking for some type of switch up. I wouldn't hate if Jordan Walker came up. Plus, I think the fans would be excited about it and make them go watch games at Busch.
Yeah, no
That's
doubt
another
about
aspect to it, yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how much longer, if he continues to hit, that the Cardinals will keep him down in Memphis. Cardinals will be back in action later today. They got the one game against the New York Mets before they start a 3-game set at home against the Tampa Bay Rays. That's Andrew Marsh and Grant Francis. I'm Tanner Hendrickson. In 15 minutes, what is Nolan Gorman's role on this team moving forward, and how does that impact his future? Me and Matthew Rocky will discuss that coming up in 15 minutes. He's going to join us in studio for a game of in or out. Make sure you get us your scenarios on the Air Comfort Service text line 314-399-9646. We'll play a game of in or out coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Are you in or are you out? It's In or Out with BK and Ferrario.
Time to get into... Oh, Marsh, I like that. Somebody had to do it with Ferrario being out. I can't do it, though. Time to get into a game of In or Out here on the producer party. That was Andrew Marsh of the Fast Lane. We got Matt Rocchio from the opening drive in. We got the Swiss Army knife spinning the dials for us. Grant Francis. I'm Tanner Hendrickson. And let's play a game of In or Out. Send your scenarios in to the Air Comfort Service text line 314-399-9646. I'll get us started here today, guys. In or Out? From our segment, our last segment before the break, In or Out, we will see Jordan Walker before September rosters expand.
I'm out.
Yeah, I'm out on that one. Honestly, I'm even wondering if we're going to see him when rosters expand. The way that John Mozeliak has been talking about him all year, the fact that the key, and I know we're going to get into this later in the show, the key to this Cardinals team is going to be honing in on one thing they do well, and I think that thing might be relief pitching, and so I think there could be a good chance with the call-up just being a smaller number of just 2 now. I think there could be a chance that they're both arms.
I'm probably going to go out on that, too. I want to see him up. I don't think the Cardinals are going to bring him up, though. So I'm going to go out on this as well.
I wouldn't mind seeing him, but for that reason, and the Cardinals never give me things that I actually enjoy.
No?
At least not recently. They did when I was a child. Not as an adult, though, which is unfortunate. I'm out.
Tommy Fan give you a 10-pointer.
He did give me a 10-pointer.
Yeah, what are you talking about? But that's more of a fan thing than a Cardinals fan.
What have you done for me recently, though, Rock?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
That was only a few days ago.
I would say I am out as well, but I do think he'll be a part of the September call-ups. Although it will be interesting because to Rock's point that it could be 2 arms, guess who is stretching out as a starter on a rehab assignment? Steven Matz.
Oh, gosh.
He screams at least 1 arm. Now, what they do with him, I have no idea. And then what they're going to do with that, if they are going to go a second arm, I could see where they say, what about Chris Roycroft? What about a Kyle Leahy who's been okay for them? It just depends on how things look in the bullpen. And if they are a mess, then I can see them going 2 arms to your point. But I still think they're going to say, hey, he's been hitting the ball well. Let's call him up.
I also want to say that there is another thing, like you talked about earlier in the show. If Riley O'Brien gets right, then definitely I think a Roycroft or a Leahy becomes a potential for this second spot there.
Rock, what do you got for us for In or Out?
In or Out, I don't know if you guys heard it, but the new champion of the men's 100-meter, Noah Lyles, the American, has sparked some controversy. So In or Out on his big controversy. Should the top 4 American sports stop calling themselves world champions, considering it's just North American teams, or most likely USA teams, in those leagues?
I'm going to say out on this. I think the top 4 sports leagues should be able to call themselves world champions because I think they are the 4 best sports league of their respective sport. You look at baseball. Why do you see guys like a Shota Imanaga or Shohei Ohtani come to Major League Baseball? Because it's the best league in the world. So I think that when you talk about the 4 primary sports, the 4 major sports here in the U.S., baseball, football, hockey, and basketball, all 4 are the best in their respective league or their respective sport. I think you should be allowed to call yourself world champion. MLS team? No, you're not even close to being one of the top dogs in soccer.
You're not giving the Hanshin Tigers a shot at the Texas Rangers, so how do we know?
Sure, we could give them a shot. They'd get destroyed.
I'm just saying, you're not giving them a shot, though.
I'm out on this. I think you should be allowed to call yourself
one of the 2 teams in the CFL called the Rough Riders is not coming down here and getting walloped by the Chiefs, so we don't actually know that the Super Bowl champions are the world champions.
We know.
There's a reason why those players aren't playing in the 4 best sports leagues in the world. That's it. There's a reason why they're not playing in it.
The reason why I'm out on this for Mr. Lyles is simply that when you look at the most internationally based sport obviously, I guess Major League Baseball, because of all the Hispanic players, is probably a larger percentage than the NBA. But my example here is going to be the NBA, in that when you look at the proliferation of basketball since 1992 in the Dream Team, look at how much more foreign the NBA has gotten. And that's a world league now. You can't tell me that those guys would be playing in Spain for Real Madrid or what have you in Europe. That's the best league. It's the best talent from the entire world now at this point over the last 30 years. You can't tell me that the NBA championship isn't a world championship at this point.
See, I'm going to go in on it.
Damn it,
whoa!
And I'm not saying that.
Just hate the American
I
sports
see no
leagues.
red. I see no red on you today. Plenty of white and blue, but not any red, and that's problematic for me.
Grant's a huge fan of the Dell overseas.
Well, look, they are the best sports leagues in the world. There's no arguing that. But
You're going to try.
you're not playing internationally. You're just not. So why are you calling yourselves a world champion if you're not playing internationally?
Because
Someone
all
had
of
to
the
bring-
Look at the
players.
NHL. You love the NHL. Is the NHL not
It's
the world
two
champion?
countries.
Yeah,
They're
but
not playing around
is
the world.
Is the SHL
actually,
champion going to walk in
I'm
here
not
and dog
saying
walk
the
the Bruins?
SHL is better than the NHL. I'm saying that they're not playing around the world. So
Right.
why would you say world champions?
I don't even think the NHL even says world champions.
I don't think
you
they
don't call
do.
yourself
I
a
don't think
world
they do.
champion.
I think
You
they
call
say
yourself
Stanley
a
Cup champ.
Stanley Cup
I
champion.
guess they don't. That's fair, but I mean, yeah.
But like NBA world champion,
It's the same thing, though.
baseball.
I was completely
hell,
wrong.
the thing's called the World
The
Series.
NHL is like 70% European or Canadian at this point. How is that not the world championship? You're listening to
Well, no,
Stanley
I
Cup?
agree with you. The best players in the world come to play here in the United States for those respective sports. Soccer, different question.
I didn't even- yeah,
different
we were-
conversation.
yeah, I'm not-
but for the top four sports, these are the best players in the world. Why wouldn't it be called the world? Honestly, this is a conversation I don't even really care about.
Now,
like I don't know this guy. Congrats to him. He's
This
fantastic.
guy, the fastest man in the world
Fastest
right now.
man in the world right now.
Gold-
Congrats to
Olympic
him.
gold medal.
But like
Whatever.
he brought this up like a few months ago, and
Yeah,
like
he's been getting a lot of hate from the NBA Twitter, and the funny thing was, it actually spilled over, and there was a lot of people on X and such Europeans who were like, "Why do Americans think they can get away with this?" And everyone was like, "Because we are the best leagues in the world. What do you want from us?"
Marsh, what do you got for us for in or out today?
I'm going to go to the Major League Baseball standings, and I'm looking at the Baltimore Orioles, who are having a great year. They did last year. You have the Seattle Mariners, a young team for them, on the come up. They're in first place. But I'm looking at the Kansas City Royals. They're in third place right now, 63-50. Are you in or out on Kansas City being the next best team, best young team in the American League?
Oh,
I'm in. I'll go for it. Bobby Witt's obviously a star, and if you actually dive into some of these numbers, every time I was checking out a Cardinal number that we're going to be talking about later, there were a couple times where I was like, man, the Royals are a lot higher on that list, while the Cardinals are sitting like 22nd, 25th, or 28th and everything I'm looking at. And the Royals on some of these splits are really coming out pretty high. They got some really good numbers in their favor. I'm going to go in on this one, Marshy.
I think I am in as well. And I think it just comes down to they have the two most important things you need to do this. One, they got the superstar position player, Bobby Witt Jr., who you mentioned, who's making a run for the AL MVP. And they've got their future ace in Cole Reagans. That dude is a stud. So I'm in. I think they can be the next up-and-coming kind of young team with the Baltimore Orioles in the AL.
I'll go in on that as well. There's nobody else in the AL that you really look at and see a ton of promise in. And then you've got like teams like the Twins and the Guardians. They're probably close to their peak, and they're going to be coming on the downhill side here soon. So, yeah, I think the Royals could definitely be the team that ends up being at the top of that AL Central here pretty soon.
Grant, what do you got for us for in or out?
All right, in or out, guys. Dylan Carlson just hit his first home run of the season with the Rays. In or out, as a Ray, Dylan will pass his home run leading of his career. He had 18 in 2021. As a Ray, he will hit more than 18 in a season in his career.
I'm gonna say out. Yeah. I trust the Rays to potentially fix him if Dylan Carlson's willing to let the Rays work with him and try and fix his swing that is broken. But I don't know if he's gonna get to that mark again. I just don't know if he's gonna end up ever developing into that power bat again. So I'm gonna say out. I don't think he's gonna be a star with Tampa Bay.
I'm out too. I don't know. I think we've seen him. I think when you think of the guys that the Cardinals got rid of, I think the main thing is they didn't get enough runway. Like Randy Arozarena didn't get enough runway here. Obviously, the two pitchers they gave up, Zach Gallen, Sandy Alcantara, they didn't get any runway. Lane Thomas, I don't think he got the proper runway. Dylan Carlson has had ample opportunity here.
I'm with you.
Same thing with Tyler O'Neill. Now Tyler O'Neill's having a decent year. He's having a good year. I don't see it from Dylan Carlson.
He's going to get ample opportunity in Tampa Bay. they don't. The young bats that they have are more infielders, based on what I'm seeing, and there might be some of these young guys that they just acquired at the deadline who maybe pop in the outfield that I'm not aware of. But I feel like he's going to look at getting a fair amount of at-bats next year. And so it would be 18 for the career high?
Yep.
Man, I'd have to bet. Like, I'd be pushing around that number if I was betting in Vegas is like what he finished his career high is or what his career high is from here on before the end of his time in baseball. I'm in. I'm going to take. He's going to play borderline a full season for the Rays next year, so I'll take it.
I'm going to go in. I don't think he's going to be like an all-star by any means, but I mean, he's 25 years old. He's still got a long time in MLB if he, ends up producing at least a little bit in Tampa Bay. So I think he's going to get the opportunity, and I think at least 1 year out of his career, he'll run into a season where he's hitting 18 or more home runs.
All right, let's get to two scenarios here from the text line, 314-399-9646, the Air Comfort Service text line. From the 636, guys, in or out, the Cardinals will make the playoffs with 84 wins.
Out.
I'm so out on that.
Always trust Tommy Pham's math. He's really good at it.
Oh, is he? I didn't know he was a mathematician.
He's known his stats. Like back when he's in his first stint with the Cardinals, if you walked up to him and you asked him about like how his night that night or something like that, he'd be like, "Hey, listen, I'm slugging 735 against left-handed pitchers, and if I get fastballs, I'm really hitting those at a good level." He had that stuff locked in. Tommy Pham knows the numbers. I'm going with him. 86 wins.
Yeah, I'm out as well, just because I still think the Cardinals could be a playoff team, even though I'm not counting on that. But I'm with you. I think it's probably going to take 85 to 86, somewhere in that range to get that last wild card spot. And one more here before we go to break. From the 636, in or out, we will see a NL Central team win a World Series in the next 5 years.
Out.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't necessarily have to be the Cardinals.
No, 5 years is just enough time for Paul Skeens to lead the Pittsburgh Pirates to glory.
That's what I'm saying.
I was thinking, let's start with winning a series first. The Cardinals are not the only team that don't know how to win playoff series in the National League Central. Let's not forget
Milwaukee?
that. Yes.
Also, the Cincinnati was supposed to like pop and be good as a young squad like 3 years ago. So how's that going?
I would actually say into this one because I think you could see Pittsburgh, to your point, if that rotation stays healthy. Would it shock anybody if they could go on like a Mets-style run? That was at the 2015 Mets that had that incredible rotation. Got the Cincinnati Reds. If they actually invest in their team, which we've seen them be willing to commit payroll before, then I could say, okay, I can see where Elly De La Cruz and the Reds could get to that spot. Milwaukee, I don't know. Cardinals, I don't know. Who's the team I'm forgetting the NL Central? Oh, the Cubs. No, they suck. But I could see the Reds, and I could potentially see the Pirates. Really, sore subject, Grant. Had to just throw it in my face.
Honestly, if I'm thinking about like the Pirates window, it's honestly 4 or 5 years, and I don't even know about 6 or 7 because I don't know if they're ever going to pay anybody.
That's the problem, and I don't know if they've got the position core to really get to that.
They don't
point.
have. I mean, they got a couple young guys in the infield, a couple young guys in the outfield who are big names. All you got to do is supplement those guys, and they've got some good veterans. I actually think year 4 is when I'm kind of worried about the Pirates, honestly.
I think for me, I think their ceiling is like 2013 Pirates, like Garrett Cole Pirates. Yeah. Like, great team, put the Cardinals in a tough spot. Cardinals ended up beating them, and then they kind of fizzled out. 2015, they made the playoffs. Kind of fizzled out. Yeah. Like, I don't see it from them.
But the difference there is that those young guys like Polanco those guys hit a wall, and they didn't become that, like, those cornerstone players they were supposed to have. Now if you get O'Neal Cruz and you get these other young guys going in the outfield and get them past that 25-year mark where they're consistent MLB players, that's where it's different from the Garrett Cole years, because you have an even better version, even younger version of Cole in Skeens, and then you actually get those young players past that part of the hill that they couldn't get over 10 years ago. That's where Pittsburgh maybe breaks through.
All I'm saying is some franchises, they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to win.
Yeah.
This ain't the early 1900s anymore. The Pirates are a completely different organization.
That's Andrew Marsh. He's got to get out of here because he's got to go do this thing called his job where he's got to go produce the Fast Line. Marsh, thanks for filling in for my guy
thanks
Brandon.
For having us, guys.
As it's the producer party here on 101 ESPN. Matt Rocky is going to be with me for the rest of the show up until 2 o'clock alongside Grant Francis. It is 12:38, your Clarkson Jeweler time check. In 15 minutes, we'll get to the junk drawer. But coming up next, what is Nolan Gorman's role on the St. Louis Cardinals moving forward? We'll discuss that here on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Tough weekend for the Cardinals as they dropped 3 of 4 games in Chicago, and they also lost Michael Siani, who finds himself on the 10-day IL after suffering a right oblique strain. Victor Scott II will get an opportunity as he was recalled from Memphis due to that injury to Siani. Cardinals will be in action today as they welcome in the Mets at Busch Stadium. It'll be Andre Palante getting this game for the Cardinals, going up against Sean Manaea for the Mets, and first pitch from Busch Stadium will be at 4:15. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
It is there for the taking. Can we take it in game 2? Struck him out. Neris strikes out Crawford. There's the biggest out of the game, recorded by the Cubs pitching staff.
The history, more than anything. I mean, this is a guy that is going to stay away from Carp and Siani. Crawford stays on the ball well. He's 5 for 7 off of him. Didn't work out.
Well, that's what it sounded like on Friday on Bally Sports Midwest and the Marquee Sports Network, the Chicago Cubs home for baseball, as I thought it was pretty telling. Tanner Hendrickson here with Matt Rocchio and Grant Francis. That, guys, the Cardinals in that scenario, trailing 5-3 with 2 outs in the top of the 8th inning and the bases loaded, and Siani's spot comes up in the order. Well, he's healthy at the time. And the Cardinals decide, hey, we've got Nolan Gorman, we've got Matt Carpenter, we've got Brandon Crawford on our bench. And you heard Ollie Marmol there explaining why he went to Brandon Crawford. I think it's very telling that the St. Louis Cardinals do not trust Nolan Gorman right now because of that decision right there, where they decide to pinch hit with Brandon Crawford. And, hey, look, I'm not trying to tell you that they're wrong because since the All-Star break, Nolan Gorman's hitting 115 with a 525 OPS and a 43% strikeout percentage. But I think it's very telling where the St. Louis Cardinals are at with Nolan Gorman because you come up in that spot, bases loaded, game essentially on the line. That's what decides that game right there. And what do the Cardinals do? They turn to Brandon Crawford over Nolan Gorman, a guy who can really change the outcome of that baseball game if he makes contact, because we know he could potentially slug the baseball, drive in multiple runs to either tie or take the lead in that game, or hell, hit a grand slam. But the Cardinals are clearly at a point right now where they do not trust Nolan Gorman, and that makes me wonder, guys, what is his role on the team in the here and now, and what does this mean, in your opinion, for Nolan Gorman's future?
His role right now is he's a pinch hitter in only advantageous spots or ones where the game's a little bit out of the game a little bit.
No, he's not. We've got Brandon Crawford.
Because, well, where it's not close, exactly. Because you have to get him right. Because if you're going to win a playoff series, I believe the Cardinals, if they had to put together, their plan of how it would work, 2 of the 3 or 4 guys who are just not hitting at all this season are going to have to actually hit in that series if you're going to want to win. And Nolan Gorman is probably more likely to do it than maybe some of the older players. And also, if you extrapolate Nolan Gorman's numbers back out to the beginning of July, his OPS, jumps up to just below 800, which wouldn't be terrible. The slugging percentage still probably isn't what you would want it to be, but nonetheless, the overall numbers get you to a playable guy, especially when you consider the more average defense he can bring to you at times as well. So he's got to get right. But the problem is and BK talked about this a lot on the morning show, and we get this text right as I'm about to say this from the 217, why not AAA? Because that doesn't actually make you a better hitter when you're at his level. When you've already been a guy who can show that full season you have 30 home run power, I'm not sure that going down to AAA and seeing easier pitching helps you fix the fact that you can't catch up to high fastballs from major league level pitching. He knows what his issue is. It's not hard. We can look at the numbers and see these are the statistical profiles and what you have to fix. Now the question is, how do you fix it? And I don't think that gets easier, 1, being at AAA, and 2, not playing Major League Baseball overall.
Yeah, and that's why, and I know it's frustrating, and it's really hard to do, especially for a team that is starting to see the playoff picture kind of slip from their grasp 3 games out going into today's game against the New York Mets, which is quietly a really big game for the Cardinals today. It's hard to play him, but that's what the Cardinals have to do if he's up here. And I'm 100% with you, Rock. There's no way to send him to AAA because he's got nothing left to prove.
Yeah.
Now, if you wanted to say, well, send him down and then you can trade him in the offseason, I think you hurt his value by doing so.
That too.
But I understand that there are those ebbs and flows with Nolan Gorman, but man, I continue to say it. He's the one guy that can change, whether it be the outcome of your team for a week and a half stretch, because he can get so hot and can carry a team on his back, or if you get to October, can carry you in October. And that's why they're moving away from him, and I understand it to an extent, but if he's going to be on this big league roster, he's not best served as a pinch hitter because he has too much swing and miss in his game. And as much as I love his left-handed bat, I don't think he can be a guy that you say, big spot, like you saw over the weekend, where you say, can we really trust Nolan Gorman to come through here? And that's exactly what the Cardinals told you with their actions by turning to Brandon Crawford. I'm not buying the whole he was 5 for 7 in his career and faced him in like 3 years.
That made it worse in my mind.
Because
if you were just saying, if your process, because I like to focus on that, if your process was we simply do not trust Nolan Gorman in a big moment where a strikeout absolutely just does nothing for us, we have to go with a different hitter, and so we went with Brandon Crawford. If that was your rationale alone, I'd actually be fine with it because of how unsteady and inconsistent that Nolan Gorman has been. As soon as you add in a piece of logic that actually doesn't make any sense to the moment, that actually bothers me because it tells me that your process is actually is flawed, and it's leading to flawed results as well. And so there's no reason to tell me why you don't want Nolan Gorman in that situation. We understand why you wouldn't want Nolan Gorman in that situation. That's one of the big problems.
And I think for me, we just got a text from the 314. Well, then why did they send down Jordan Walker? Well, Walker is in a 3-year big leaguer at this point. There's nothing left for Gorman to prove. Walker, there's an argument of, okay, he was up, we saw him go down, saw him come back up, fix the swing, and you could see Jordan Walker and see, hey, his swing was broken. And that's why you send him down this early in his career, because you think, okay, maybe he was rushed. There's still time to have him work on stuff in AAA. And if you honestly look at his numbers last year from when he was sent down, which at the time I was not a fan of, his numbers weren't all that impressive in AAA. Cardinals just called him up because I think at the time they really needed someone to kind of take that role for Jordan Walker. But I will say this, when we're taking a look at Nolan Gorman and, okay, we're talking about the here and now. What's his role? What does this do for the future of Nolan Gorman? Because I'm on the firm stance, if the coaching staff doesn't trust Nolan Gorman to where they don't think, okay, we can't play him at second base, continue to let him go through his ebbs and flows, to me, he's a trade candidate in the offseason. He's a guy you can look to move because he's going to have some value, because teams are going to look at that pure power from the left side, say, we can probably fix to where he's going to have the ebbs and flows. He's going to go through those stretches where he's like 1 for 15 and has 10 strikeouts. But we know that left-handed power plays a big role in October. It's why guys like Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber are such big factors. Jock Peterson, a guy that probably has his kind of profile. It's why if the coaching staff doesn't trust him and they say, hey, we can't really continue this whole, he's going to be hot for a week and a half, but he's going to be cold for 3 weeks. He's a trade candidate in the offseason because you can play Brendan Donovan at second base, and you can potentially then have an outfield of Lars Nootbaar, Michael Siani, Jordan Walker, / Tommy Pham if you decide to bring him back. I think if you're seeing the coaching staff right now saying, hey, we don't believe that we can have a guy with this level of ebbs and flows in this game, to me, he's then a trade candidate in the offseason for the Cardinals.
Yeah, and I think they need to commit one way or the other. Like, if you're going to say that Nolan Gorman is a part of our future, you need to play him. Because I agree with you, Rock, that sending him down at this point isn't really going to be of benefit to him. But I can tell you what else isn't going to be of benefit to him. That's rotting on the bench. Like, He's not going to figure out his problems. He's not going to help himself if he's not playing.
And to Tanner's point, he's not really a good profile for a pinch hitter at this moment either.
Yeah, and I mean, he was in the lineup 1 out of the 4 games this weekend in Chicago. Mind you, that was the game that they won. Not saying that was because of Nolan Gorman being in the lineup. But if you're playing 1 out of every 4 games, how are you going to get the consistent reps to get back into your groove and figure things out? You're not going to. And that's why eventually the Cardinals get to their breaking point saying we can't keep doing this. They trade the player. The player goes off and starts getting consistent reps, and then the player's an all-star. Like, you got to commit one way or the other. You can't keep doing this crap of going back and forth and being like, well, we want to keep him, but we don't want to give him consistent reps because he's not producing like we need him to. Well, no, he's not going to produce like you need him to if he's not getting the consistent reps to figure himself out.
And see, that's why the Cardinals are stuck between a rock and a hard place right now, because you can't consider this season. I know some texters would disagree. You can't consider this season done because the looks like the Central's falling apart.
I'm with you.
And so you can't just play him to play him. But at the same time, if you were further out from this, the Siani injury actually, I think, would create a perfect situation to create minutes for him or innings for him, because you could then have Pham play center field. Brendan Donovan then starts getting time out in left field. And now Nolan Gorman's getting consistent at-bats at a time when it doesn't matter because you're not trying to win, but you're thinking about 2025. I think that also could have worked really well with like a trade of like a volatile piece, like a Ryan Helsley. But that's not what they did. They decided that they're going to make a playoff run, and so now they are stuck between a rock and a hard place of, again, where do you put a guy who isn't going to get better in the minors, but isn't good enough right now to actually be in your roster? And unfortunately, this is kind of the weird purgatory that the Cardinals continue to find them in position battles across the outfield and the middle infield.
And we got a text from the 314. Guys, where do you think it went wrong for Nolan Gorman? I actually don't know if it's gone wrong for Nolan Gorman to an extent, because I don't think his swing is necessarily broken. I think this has just always been Nolan Gorman.
Pitchers figured out the spot to throw it,
and I think there are years where Nolan Gorman is going to have this kind of season where he hits like 190, 210, but you look up and you're going to be like, oh, damn, he hit 25 home runs? He hit 30 home runs for the Cardinals that year? I just think this is who Nolan Gorman is.
And again, we're also talking about a Nolan Gorman right now over the last week that is the magnifying glass is on him at the worst time of his season.
Yeah.
Like it's a sub 600 OPS right now and a sub 200 batting average. But again, you just go back to July and heck, you pull that back into mid-June and it's around an 800 OPS, which again isn't exactly what you wanted when you wanted him to grow from last year, but it's also the difference between unplayable and playable.
Yeah, that's Matt Rocchio. That's Grant Francis behind the board. I'm Tanner Hendrickson, as is the producer party, filling in for BK and Ferrario today. Coming up in 15 minutes, are the Cardinals still stuck in a defensive mindset? Should they be shifting gears and looking to become more offensive with their lineup? We'll discuss that in 15 minutes. Coming up next, though, we're diving into the junk drawer here on 101 ESPN. Time to dive into the junk drawer here on the Producers Party. Tanner Hendrickson alongside Matt Rocchio and Grant Francis. And guys, I think I found my new Olympic sport that I could maybe not win gold in, but I think I could compete in it.
How many Olympic sports is that, by the way, that you could medal in?
Oh, let's see. Definitely ping pong. I think that's the only one that I've brought up before. Maybe there's
what
one
if I
more.
give you a good doubles partner?
At ping pong?
No, in tennis.
Oh, no chance. Those guys are really good.
All right, fair enough.
I probably couldn't touch their serve either. You know, like I was excited when I could get like to 80.
Okay.
You know, they hit like 100.
Okay, so ping pong now, and so that's your first
That's
medal.
my first one.
And now what is going to be your secondary
My
medal?
new one, and I saw clips of this over the weekend, speed walking.
Unbelievable.
I think I could do it, Rock.
How many miles is the race?
That I did not see, but I did see they're doing like 6-minute miles while walking, which, man, it's going to take some training because like currently, like, you know, when I'm just like clearing my head, jamming to my tunes on my walks, it's like a 16-minute mile. I think I could get to that point. Like, there's no chance I'm getting in shape to run a mile. I could speed walk a mile, though, and put up a decent time, I think, if I really put my mind to it, my post-radio career.
Okay, so I'm looking right now, and the men's race for the Olympic speed walking is 50 kilometers, which is a 31-mile race.
Oh, that's a lot.
Am I right here? Yes, 50 kilometers is 31.0686 miles.
You know what? I think I could still train to do it, though.
The men's current winner, or record holder, I should say, is Johan Dinitz. He's a Frenchman who set the record at 3 hours and 23 minutes and 33 seconds in 2014. So you're saying that could you break 4 hours on 31 miles of speed walking?
I think if I trained, I could.
How long are we giving you a training window?
Oh, I need like a year plus, probably.
I'm gonna bet against you.
Oh, I think I could do it.
I know you think you could.
Yeah, and same with ping pong. Now that one, like, maybe I'd hear an argument for, because I watched some of that over the weekend. I was like, holy crap, those guys are really good.
You're insane.
Speed walking, I don't know. Grant, I brought this up to Grant in the office. He's like, it looks like they're running. You know, I can get away with like half running.
It's a joke, and like they're very athletic for doing a 31-mile race and going 6-minute miles. But that's not walking, that's running. If you're going a 6-minute mile, you're not walking. You might not be traditionally like running like the motion, but you're not walking if you're going a 6-minute mile.
Just got to keep your heels on the ground.
Here's the thing. Do you know what the rule is?
I don't care what the rule is.
Okay, it's that your heel can't leave the ground, right? Isn't that the rule?
Athletes must always keep in contact with the ground, and the supporting leg must remain straight until the raised leg passes it. I think that's bigger than the heels. The supporting leg must remain straight. I think that's the thing. That's the difference between the run and the walk. Is the straight leg on the supporting leg. That's holding you back a lot. I think that's a good rule.
This is interesting.
I understand this. I like that this is a difference.
This is an interesting text from the 314. Which one do you think is harder, speed walking a 6-minute mile or do you think running a 6-minute mile is harder?
I would probably say that.
I think running. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, because you can have the longer strides.
Yeah.
I would actually argue that speed walking would be more difficult. I just don't.
Grant's on my. Yes.
I don't understand the point of speed walking.
That's a good point.
Okay, like, have we thought about that?
It's a great athletic achievement. What do you mean?
A 6-minute mile is a great mile for running. This is what the Greeks
were talking about. It wasn't track and field. It was speed walking. What all of them wanted to see. I also saw a text from the 618. Guys, kickball should be in the Olympics. I'm in. If kickball is in the Olympics, I'd be down to do that.
Listen, if speed walking is in the Olympics, I see no reason why kickball cannot be in the Olympics.
Grant, would it shock you that the speed walking has been in the majority of the Olympics since 1932?
Yes, it would shock me.
Honestly,
I've never heard of it.
The living daylights out of me.
I've never heard of it.
That's more consistent than baseball.
Yes. Raul Gonzalez out of Mexico won the gold medal at the 1984 Los Angeles Games. And where's the Atlanta Games? I shouldn't have got myself into this one. Robert Korzeniowicz of Poland won the 1996 gold medal at Atlanta. So it's been around. We've got a couple of gold medals, and I guess it's going to be probably a 2026.
I want to know how do you get into this sport?
Or 2028?
Yeah, you grow up dreaming to be an Olympic walker.
I imagine you're.
You can't make it as a runner, so you
I imagine you're a distance runner, and you figure out that you're
That's my
good at
guess.
certain things. I imagine it's kind of. I get why you do it because it's kind of just like having different disciplines in like gymnastics or something like that. And so I get how you find different ways to do stuff.
Speaking of gymnastics, not gymnastics, but the one where they
couldn't
do
do
the
that one.
no, I
No,
couldn't.
don't.
It's impressive. Have you seen the one where they do the like jumping on the trampoline and do flips? I think I could probably learn that one. I don't know if I'd win gold because there's a better chance that I end up really hurting myself before I end up mastering my ability.
I watched a 60-second video of just the cameraman working the jumping the trampoline Olympics, and it's just the consistency was fascinating to me.
But yeah, I think speed walking's my sport.
I don't think you're going to be able to.
573 said I practice speed walking by speed walking through Schnucks.
There you go.
Another great way to practice. You can practice speed walking on multiple fronts. Imagine me booking it from our office down the hall down to here and trying to speed walk in, I don't know, what would be good, 5 seconds?
Somebody says disc golf, pickleball, and slow pitch softball should all be in the Olympics. I'm in for all of those ones.
I thought slow pitch softball was in a couple of years ago, but I could be wrong.
Also, 573 says Richard Jewell won the 96 speed walking for the Olympics, and that's a fantastic joke. You guys ever see the movie? You guys are so free. You guys are so young.
Don't bring up movies.
You have no
with us,
idea
Rock.
you guys have no idea what happened in the 96 Olympics, did you?
Nope.
Do you? Oh dear Lord. Read just Google that one for you two youngins. Learn about some history.
Can I look it up on a work computer?
Yes,
or no?
you can. Yes,
okay, good.
yes. But
Just
it's
making sure it wasn't
learn
a
yourself some
trick
history,
question
young men.
That's Matt Rockhill, Grant Francis behind the board. I'm Tanner Hendrickson. Coming up in 15 minutes, is Mizzou's schedule something that can work against them this season? We'll discuss that in 15 minutes. Coming up next, though, are the Cardinals stuck with this defensive mindset for their starting lineup? We'll discuss that here on 101 ESPN.
Well, then I'm going to be running the board.
Are the Cardinals stuck in a defensive mindset right now, sticking to this defensive identity like they preached early on in the season? It's why they wanted to have Victor Scott on the opening day roster. And alongside Matthew Rocchio and Grant Francis, I'm Tanner Hendrickson. You can always get involved in the show via the Air Comfort Service text line 314-399-9646, or you can watch us on YouTube, our YouTube page at 101 ESPN STL, and join the graveyard. And studio cams are powered by the Air Alliance team. And the reason I ask that question, guys, is the big thing for the St. Louis Cardinals early on in the season, and they had a litmus test with this because of their offensive struggles early on, was how long do you stick with going with this, I'm going to put in air quotes, defensive identity of, hey, we want to be strong up the middle. Wilson Contreras is our catcher. We want to have a good defensive catcher in Wilson Contreras, who's made his improvements. We want to be strong up the middle defensively. Masyn Winn and Nolan Gorman, they were good defensively for the Cardinals, and we want to be good in center field with, at the time, Victor Scott, the second early on in the season, and it slowly transitioned into Michael Siani's role. How important is that for the St. Louis Cardinals still? Because Michael Siani's on the 10-day IL. He's got that right oblique strain. And the Cardinals seem to be wanting to stick with this because I found this comment interesting from Ollie Marmol in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch this morning. Quote, I think it's been a key to us being in a lot of ball games. When you look at what he's been able to do in center, referring to Michael Siani, and being strong up the middle with the way our offense has been, we've stayed in a lot of ball games because of it. I want to keep that mindset, which puts Victor in center a decent amount. We'll still mix and match based on matchup with Newt being able to go out there as well. Do you agree with the Cardinals going with this idea of let's call up Victor Scott II and let's remain in this defensive mindset with our starting lineup?
Have we already reached the conclusion on this show that they're not very good at anything?
We got to that
those numbers?
Yeah, we got to that at 11 o'clock today. If you missed it, you can check out the podcast page presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
There you go. So just based on that idea, my take would be that, yes, you have to continue being as good as you've been on defense, or as good as you can be, because if you're not going to be even average or above average at any single thing, then you better be the absolute most perfect example of jack of all trades, but jack of all trades, master of one, not a master of none, but or better than master of none. So you got to be good at some stuff instead of just one thing. So that means you got to be good at everything. So you got to be good at, you got to have good relief pitching. You got to be better situational hitting.
We don't have
you got your starting has to be what it can be, which is Eric Fetty and Sonny Gray being a 1 and 2. Which you might have maybe in a short little time. And another thing is your defense still being good. And I think if you just look at a lot of the pitchers' numbers from July when some of them struggled, a lot of those struggles were coming from the fact that they weren't getting the defensive wins behind them that they were getting throughout that post-Mother's Day run of late May and throughout June. Those defensive wins started drying up a little bit in July, and I think that's when you saw the defense crack a little bit. The run prevention started to crack a little bit, and then the offense just isn't good enough to make up for it. And I think that fact isn't going to change, which is the offense is never going to be good enough to out-hit a bad pitching night. So you're going to have to, in my opinion, win more often with pitching and defense than offense, which means the defense has got to be there, because we know, based on the additions they made, that the pitching should still be there relatively for both the starting pitching and the relief pitching. The other factor on that side's got to be there, and that's got to be the defense. It's not starting Victor Scott, though. I think that would be too far.
See, I think if you're going to go defensive mindset, you have to start Victor Scott.
Man.
Because Lars Nootbaar, I think he's a average defender in center field. I think Victor Scott, though I don't think he's elite like Michael Siani, I think he's above average in center field. And now you're kind of plus in the corners. Lars Nootbaar, I think, is a good defender in whether it's right or left. And Tommy Pham, I think, is probably an average defender in the corners. This is where it gets interesting. This is why I like the idea of calling up Victor Scott to kind of replace Michael Siani in center field, because of what you said about the offense. I don't think the offense, even by making a couple of tweaks, so let's say they didn't call up Victor Scott, for example. Let's say they went the route of what Grant was talking about earlier in the 12 o'clock hour of, hey, should they call up Jordan Walker? Even if they call up Jordan Walker, let's say they even call up a Thomas Sajaci, who then maybe goes and takes Brandon Crawford's role. I don't think this offense can get to a point where it can be good enough to kind of outperform and get into some of those slugfests that you're talking about with this pitching staff. So what do I want to do? I don't want to worry about trying to outscore the well, you got to outscore the opponent to win in baseball. What I'm saying is I don't want to try and get into slugfest with the opponent.
Yeah.
What I want to still play that run prevention game. I still want to try and have this defense that I think I can rely upon that is going to be able to help us out. And that's why I say, okay, when I look back at that 2023 Cardinals team, for example, man, they were allowing so many doubles in the gaps. Why? Because they weren't good enough defensively in center field. And that's why I actually like the idea of calling up Victor Scott to take that role over with Michael Siani being down.
The problem with starting Victor Scott is, so let's put this in the scope of things started to go right when Michael Siani was, started hitting the ball. But when you put him in at your center field, you got a little bit better at bat than what Scott was getting you, and you got even better and more consistent defense. So those first months we were talking about Siani just being a defensive guy who you got away with the fact that his bat wasn't very good. We're talking about a 500, 550, 600 OPS for Siani. We're talking about a 300 OPS for Victor Scott II. And now, obviously, Siani over the last month, obviously everyone's talked about it. He had the stretch where he hit 300 almost across a full month, almost at 800 OPS. Obviously, that was house money, and you were taking it and running with it. So let's just go back to the success you had early post-Mother's Day when he was like a 600 OPS guy. That's a huge difference with Victor Scott III last time he was here, being like a 300. Maybe he can get up to a 400 OPS guy. That's a huge difference when you're talking about an offense that needs every at-bat. So I love the idea of Victor Scott becoming part of the bullpen in a way that he now becomes part of you saying that we do not lose games if we're leading after the sixth inning, which in the sixth, seventh, eighth inning, or seventh, eighth, ninth inning, I should say, he becomes the defensive switch you make. And I think that would be the way I'd like to see Victor Scott, because you have to get runs in those first 6 innings, especially the second through the sixth, because they're a terrible first inning team. Just something that jumped out to me earlier today. So that's my issue with starting Victor Scott, is that you're behind the 8 ball offensively now, and you can still use him in a useful way without hurting the offense as much.
See, and I think I would rather try to put my best lineup out there that can hit and score runs right now than I would put my best lineup out there in terms of defense. And the reason why is because it's fine if you want to be a great defensive team. But the problem is, putting Victor Scott out in center field alone does not make this team a great defensive team. Like, whether you have Victor Scott, even Michael Siani, and Michael Siani's a great defender by himself, but still as a team, they're not elite defensively. If you want to be elite defensively, that's fine. They're not. So at the very least, probably the most value you could put out in your lineup is at least trying to get some guys that can mash the ball and hit home runs and create offense. But they're not doing that. And if you put out, your best defensive lineup, which at the end of the day, across Major League Baseball, is probably a pretty average defensive lineup, it's not going to be helpful for you.
Yeah, and I will say this, because I do like Scott coming up, because I want him to play every day, take over that center field job, because if you weren't going to go with him and you weren't going to play him, and when I say play every day, I mean probably play against righties. Against lefties, I can understand what they're going to do. My guess, the lineup's out, correct, Grant?
Yes.
Fastlane will play the lineup game later, but I'm asking this of Grant because he's seen the lineup. Is Victor Scott in the lineup today?
He is.
Get the hell
okay.
out of here.
Well, that doesn't play into what I was thinking, because I thought Newbar would start in center field. But the reason I don't mind doing that is because if he's going to be up here, he's got to play every day. Because otherwise, it's best suited for him to be developing in AAA. But this is my thing for the Cardinals, is though I still don't mind sticking with this deep defensive mindset of let's have a lineup that's out there that we think both is a balance of our best defense and our best offense, I still don't think they are maximizing their roster. I think the roster construction really in the last month and a half has been abysmal so far for the Cardinals, because I don't understand Brandon Crawford's role. Why is Brandon Crawford up here when he's gotten, I think, 5 plate appearances since the All-Star break? You don't really need a backup shortstop anymore. You need in case of emergency if Masyn Winn went down. But Masyn Winn's not at the point he was early on in the season where he was clearly dealing with a back injury. It's why we saw so much of Brandon Crawford. Can I not have Thomas Ajacci up here in a right-handed bat role off the bench now that you've got to play Tommy Pham because you're dealing with this Michael Siani injury? Can we not see what Thomas Ajacci is as a bat? Because if we're being honest with ourselves, he's probably not a guy that you're saying, oh, well, when he's up here, he's got to get at bats. No, he's probably best suited as a guy that's kind of a Swiss Army knife type of guy that kind of comes off the bench to help the St. Louis Cardinals. And to that point, we saw Pedro Pages last night. The Cardinals continue to be afraid to play. If you're going to carry two catchers, one of them being defensive-minded in Pedro Pages, you can't be afraid to lose the DH. And it's a constant theme with Ali Marmol of being afraid to lose the DH in a situation in last night's game where they potentially can climb back into that game. But Pages comes up in, I believe it was the seventh inning last night's game, first and second, and the Cardinals don't pinch hit. They let Pages take the at-bat. What's he do? He's out, and the inning's over. Why do you take that at-bat? Because you fear losing the DH. Well, okay, if we're going to operate that way, then the Cardinals need Ivan Herrera up here because you need to have somebody that can come off the bench and provide an at-bat. And by the way, if you look at Pages' defensive numbers so far lately, if we're sticking with this defensive mindset for carrying Pages as the backup, look, he may call a better game than Ivan Herrera does. He's certainly not much better at throwing guys out because since the All-Star break, 13 of 14 stolen base attempts have been successful against Pedro Pages. You know who could put up those kind of numbers defensively behind the plate? Ivan Herrera. And I'm getting the bat that Pedro Pages isn't providing. And the part that confuses me there is why they're going with a 50-50 split. And I mean a true 50-50 split. 16 games past the All-Star break. Both guys have started 8 games behind the plate. They're not maximizing their roster construction. I think you can get away with playing Victor Scott every day in center field, but you've got to be willing to say, hey, we don't have a role for Brandon Crawford. We need to call up either a third catcher in Ivan Herrera, if you still believe you want to have Pedro Pages, or you've got to say, let's bring up a Thomas Sajaci and maybe even flip a Pages for Herrera. To me, you can stick with this defensive mindset, but you got to have a bench behind you. And right now, you look at the Cardinals bench, and it's not there. They're at a disadvantage right now.
You need a bench you need righties because now your righty bat is now starting in the outfield in Tommy Pham. Your extra righty is now your everyday righty. And something that jumps out to me, I know we're not doing the lineup game. I don't want to ruin this. I'm sorry, Fastlane. But I have to point this out because this is the lineup today against the lefty and Sean Manaea. The bottom 4 of the lineup is lefty Alec Burleson batting 6th, lefty Brendan Donovan batting 7th, Pedro Pages batting 8th, obviously a righty, and then Victor Scott batting 9th as a lefty. So my thing there is looking at the situation. Pages is behind the plate, and Wilson Contreras is the DH. So my thing is now, so you're looking at a late, let's talk about like the 6th or 7th inning, right? When you need to maybe take a lead 2-1 to give your bullpen that chance to close one out in a very crucial game. They put in a lefty reliever to replace Manaea, also a lefty. Heck, it could be Manaea still. Maybe he's dealing in the 6th. And now all of a sudden he has Burleson, Donovan, and Pages up. Are you feeling good about 2 lefties going up against another lefty and then Pages being the potential guy who's got to drive it in? Wouldn't you feel a lot better if, oh yes, Ivan Herrera was maybe coming off the bench to fill in, pinch hit, and take over the catcher role as a righty bat in that? Wouldn't you feel a lot better having Ivan Herrera in this situation? And the problem is that we shouldn't be able to draw up a situation that is very likely to happen, that the Cardinals could be looking at tonight and saying, we do not have a good situation for this because we didn't look ahead and bring in an Ivan Herrera. And that's a problem. You have to be the ones looking ahead.
Yeah, 100% with you. That's Matt Rocchio, the producer of the opening drive. Grant Francis behind the board, the Swiss Army knife here at 101 ESPN. I'm Tanner Hendrickson. In 15 minutes, what is the ceiling for Masyn Winn's offense? But coming up next, let's discuss the Missouri Tiger football season. Could their schedule actually be something that could cost them for the college football playoff? We'll discuss that next year on 101 ESPN. Welcome back to the Producer Party. Tanner Hendrickson alongside Matt Rocchio and Grant Francis. Guys, I'm excited for the college football season. Mizzou's going to kick off here in about 3 weeks when they take on the incredibly tough FCS opponent, Murray State. How exciting that will be.
Woo, let's go. It's going to be a barn burner.
But looking at Missouri's schedule, we've talked about this in the past here on BK and Ferrario of, hey, they avoided a tough schedule. You look at, like, the Florida Gators. I feel bad for Billy Napier. He's probably going to be fired because that's a tough schedule. But you look at the Missouri Tigers, they avoid some of the best teams in the SEC. You know, they're not going to see Georgia, for example. They're not going to see the Texas Longhorns. They've got a bit of a easier schedule. When you look at their September stretch, according to ESPN, they have at least an 87% chance to beat each of their September opponents. Their first real test does not come until October 26th when they are at Alabama. Or excuse me, October 5th at Texas A&M. They've got really 3 tough games on their schedule, in my opinion. At Texas A&M, which I just referenced on October 5th, at Alabama October 26th, and then they've got Oklahoma on November 9th. And I think something that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on is, okay, if the Tigers go 10-2, and let's just say they end up beating Oklahoma, but then they lose at Alabama and they lose at Texas A&M. And there's a lot of skepticism if that Oklahoma team is going to be very good translating to the SEC. Does this schedule actually?
They're catching Oklahoma at the end of an absolute just gauntlet.
Yeah, exactly. That too, and they've got a bye week heading into that game as well. Is it actually possible that this schedule ends up hurting the Missouri Tigers? That if they go 10-2 and they don't pick up a big win on the road at A&M or at Alabama, that it could be a schedule that the committee doesn't look that highly upon?
Am I crazy that I really just think I don't know how much strength of schedule is actually going to be a salient talking point when it gets down to it, because I just think there's going to be so much more room with just the records difference. I think there's going to be a lot of space, I think, between a lot of these spots. I think there's always going to be the people, 13, 14, and 15, assuming those are the spots that are left out. Obviously, there can be some weird chicanery with the highest group of 5 team being outside the top 12. Let's assume they are. Let's assume they are in the top 12. There's going to be a lot of the 13, 14, 15 complaining about them being better than 10, 11, and 12. But beyond that, I really don't think there's going to be too much classic BCS kind of conversations about the strength of schedule like there were when, Boise State was going on their run or whatever. I just think there's going to be, with the way that the conferences have come together, I just think too many of the Blue Bloods are going to have 2 or 3 lost seasons. And so I think the bigger question is going to be about, who did you lose to? What do your wins look like? I think it might sound a lot more like college basketball has been over the last few years than a normal college football kind of discussion. But I do think it could affect the Tigers, just because if a team like Boston College ends up actually being really good relative to what people expected from them, if even Auburn is better than people expect from the SEC, they actually could have a pretty good schedule in the end. But the thing is that if Auburn is just middling in the SEC, and if Boston College doesn't, go 10-2, because in that conference you're going to have to win double-digit games to really get national respect, then it is a very light schedule with, like you said, really only 3 hard games, and 2 of them are our way. So it could hurt them in the long run. I just don't know if I'm really expecting it to be, like 2005 and the conversations being so much about strength of schedule.
I worry about it for the Tigers a little bit, just because I've seen how the committee looks at this in the past. And you might be right. It may be where you end up seeing a lot of these, as these conferences have kind of merged together, where you've got the SEC and Big Ten with more teams in it this year, that you see some of the best just kind of beat the crap out of each other. And it really kind of draws down that loss ranking of that 2 lost teams being more of them. But my concern for the Missouri Tigers is, I think you're going to have to put up style points against some of these opponents on your schedule.
Point. Yes.
Because you're not going to have the...
What do your wins look like?
Well, look, we beat Oklahoma. Well, what if Oklahoma's lost like 4 games?
Yeah.
Is that really that impressive of a win? There's a chance, and we'll see how it plays out. It's kind of an unknown in this new college football playoff format. There's a chance you could look at a 3-loss team and say they've got a better resume than the Missouri Tigers. And I know that sounds crazy to say, but I never thought I would say an undefeated ACC champion would miss the college football playoff last year. So I do think that when you look at their schedule, it could be something that you look back on and say, oh, man, they don't really have a good win on this schedule. They've lost to their 2 toughest opponents on the road at Texas A&M and at Alabama. But if Oklahoma ends up not being very good, okay, well, now all of a sudden we're looking at, okay, so that's an okay win for the Missouri Tigers. Well, what did they do against lesser opponents? Did they end up doing what they should have done, which was not just win, but win convincingly, not having any slip-ups where you look back on it and go, oh, did Vanderbilt really hang around with Missouri for a little bit? Because that's when you start to get some of the questions from the College Football Playoff Committee.
And would it completely shock you if you beat Oklahoma and now Oklahoma's a 3-loss team, because they have Tennessee and they have Texas before they play Missouri. In fact, they also have South Carolina, who, while not being the most talented team 1 through 22, has some legitimate stars on their roster. Tulane was a sneakily good, probably maybe the second best group of 5 team last year. They have them in week 2. They might, that might be a game that, again, they don't get the style points because they only end up pulling off like a 45 to 38 victory. And it's like, well, hold on a second. You should be hammering them by 21. And so Oklahoma could really be marred. And at the same time, what's Bama going to be? Is Bama, by the time that Mizzou, lines up against them on October 26th, has the shine already kind of come off from the Saban to DeBoer change?
Yeah.
And, if they lose to Georgia early in the season, right out of the gate, if they then fall to Tennessee right before they face off against Missouri, that's a very different, way you're looking at that Alabama team too. And I really do think we're going to see some massive cannibalization inside of these conferences.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think there is definitely a chance that we see that in these conferences. It's going to be interesting to see because it's kind of an unknown as to how this is going to play out with this new 12-team college football playoff experience. I'm excited for it a little bit. I do think it's a little too much of an expansion. I know I don't have to worry about Illinois getting in. I saw someone say I'm a little biased. Hey, look, I'm just rooting for bowl eligibility, baby. 6 wins, and T-Bone will be happy with Brett Bielema's whatever season this is for him.
Strive for 8. We always want to strive for 8. Never strive for 6. Always push for 8.
Like they can get to 8. 1:33 is your time check presented by Clarkson Jewelers. That's Matt Rocchio, Grant Francis behind the board for us. I'm Tanner Hendrickson. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll dive into the BK and Ferrario Rewind. But coming up next, we'll have a chance for you to win a pair of lawn tickets to see Green Day on Thursday, August 15th. And we're also going to talk about what is Masyn Winn's ceiling offensively. Discuss that next year on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals pick up only one win in Chicago this weekend as the Cubs took 3 of 4 in that series against their rivals. And the Cardinals also lost Michael Siani this weekend as he was placed on the 10-day IL due to an oblique strain. Victor Scott II was recalled from Memphis. He'll be in the lineup today for the Cardinals as they take on the Mets at Busch Stadium. It'll be Andre Palante getting the start for the Cardinals, going up against Sean Manaea for the Mets, and first pitch from Busch will be at 4:15. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Aggressive swing if he gets one to hit. He does send one to right center field. Crow Armstrong going back at the wall. He's done it. Masyn Winn sends one over the basket for a home run to right center field.
That's what it sounded like last night on Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN. And alongside Matt Rocchio and Grant Francis, I'm Tanner Hendrickson. And guys, watching Masyn Winn, we can all agree he's been one of the best bright spots for the St. Louis Cardinals so far this year. In his rookie season, that was home run number 9 for him. He's hitting .280. He's got decent on base at .325. He's hit a little bit for power. He's 7% above league average as we sit here today on August 5th going into their game against the New York Mets. And I couldn't help but watching him last night think to myself, man, what's the ceiling for Masyn Winn offensively? Because coming into the year, he was kind of in the Michael Siani, or in most case, Michael Sinise scenario, where it was, hey, he's just going to be in the lineup, provide gold glove level defense at shortstop, and whatever we get out of his bat is going to be a bonus. Well, his bat is playing now at the big league level. And watching him last night, am I crazy to think that he could potentially develop into a guy that's maybe got 15, 20 home run power, maybe even a little bit more, 20 to 25. Am I crazy, Rock? Because watching him, man, he's patient at the plate. He has a great 2-strike approach, and he's also a guy that now you're starting to take some swings, and he even talked about this over the weekend. When he sees pitches he likes early on in the count, he's taking more aggressive swings. Do you think his ceiling could potentially be a 20, 25 home run guy offensively?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you just look at some of the numbers, and I know you guys are big fans of Baseball Savant, between the hours of 11 and 2.
Oh, yeah, nothing better than late night, nothing's on. What do? You hop on the Savant page.
By the way, people think that Tanner's joking. Legitimately, if you're a St. Louis Cardinals fan and you've never actually gone to Baseball Savant, just think of a player you want to know a little bit more about. Google just their name in Baseball Savant and then dive into some of the numbers. If you are a baseball fan, you honestly can have a lot of fun looking. I know it sounds nerdy. People are going to make fun of this. Legitimately, seeing some of these things that you watch game in and game out and actually being told, your eye test is correct. This is how the guy is. He does hit the ball hard. He does square it up well. He is a bad defender. He is a good defender. That's fascinating to look at. I love what Baseball Savant does, but just looking at a couple of his numbers, he has some fantastic metrics that tell you that if he can just continue what he's doing now, the numbers are going to continue to get bigger and he's going to continue to be a bigger hitter. In fact, the big thing that jumps out to me is how low his barrel percentage is right now, and that just tells me that's something that as you become a more natural hitter, and this is a guy who, again, look at where he was as a hitter 2 years ago in the minors. Look at where he was as a hitter last year in the majors, and then look at where he is now. There's nothing telling me he can't get a barrel percentage up to a more of a major league average level. Right now, it's one of the lowest ones in the entire league. Just that number is one of the things that when you compare it with his ability to actually square up and make contact overall, those things are going to mesh together, and his numbers should actually maybe take a little bit of a leap. I know this, part of this might seem prisoner of the moment. He just had that incredible piece come out on STL today talking about how he's swinging for the fences now with that new mindset. But I really do think you're onto something here, Tanner, where 20 home run player isn't insane to think when you look at what he's putting together right now.
Yeah, and the reason I say that is because I think a lot of people would say, really, that feels like a stretch. Guy that's probably more of a 15 home run guy. And I'm not going to say he's going to become this player.
He's taken his line drive percentage from 17% to 29% this year.
Yeah, he's made improvements, man, across the board. Now, one thing that is a little alarming is, and we'll see how this translates into next season, doesn't hit the ball very hard.
Yes.
Average XVelo is low.
Yep.
And why do I bring that up?
Bat speed's a little low, too.
That one I'm more just, because that's the first year we've seen this,
Fair.
we'll see how it looks moving forward. The one thing that is a little alarming is he doesn't hit the ball hard, and the reason I bring that up is because he's having a good season, and you know who else had those kind of like blinking red lights in 2021? Some guy that we traded to Tampa Bay for a reliever with a 5 ERA named Dylan Carlson. And the underlying numbers said, okay, is this sustainable? And it turned out it wasn't. Now, maybe it's different for Masyn Winn. I don't think these numbers necessarily tell you Masyn Winn, this is just a one-hit wonder, because I think he's got a good idea of the strike zone. He's got a good batter's eye, and he's got really good bat-to-ball contact rate. But the reason I mentioned the potential of being a 20, 25 home run guy is because when you look at, and I'm not saying he's going to become this guy, but think back to Francisco Lindor early on in his career. At the age of 22, starting shortstop for the Cleveland Guardians, hits 15 home runs. The year prior in his rookie year at age 21, 12 home runs. What happens? He matures into his power, becomes a 30 home run guy consistently. I don't know if he's going to age or he's going to mature into that, a 30 home run guy, but I think you could see Masyn Winn be a guy that is consistently hitting at the top of your lineup and can be a guy that's going to get on base because he hits for average, and when he gets the pitch that he likes and what he's looking for, he's going to do damage to it. I really believe Masyn Winn can become that guy.
I love that you said there, when he gets the pitch he wants, he can do damage to it. One thing that jumps out is his slugging percentage against fastballs last year was 210. This year it's 475. So just if you can catch up and consistently square up fastballs in this league, Nolan Gorman, at any part of the zone, you can get you're going to hit 15 home runs, especially if you're like Masyn Winn, where you're going to be playing 152 games every year because of how great you are at such a premium position. So I think 15 to 20 home runs is now the new scope where I'm thinking about Masyn Winn, and there's no reason, if a couple of these numbers start trending higher, that it couldn't be upwards of 25.
Here's what I will say, though. I hope it doesn't become the focus for him. Like, it'd be great if he did.
It's a great point.
But he's doing great with what he's doing now. Like, stick to what you're doing. If the power comes, that's great. But like you see with Jordan Walker, like trying to rein in that power, like he took a step back because of it. He tried to fix his swing to give him more power and launch angle and, fixing things like that. And he took a step back because of it. You don't want to see that out of Masyn Winn. Like, keep doing what you're doing. What he's doing is great. If more power comes down the line, that's just like found money, for the Cardinals. But don't completely ditch what you're doing now, trying to find more power.
Yeah, that's Grant Francis. That's Matt Rocchio. I'm Tanner Hendrickson. Hey, we've now got your chance to win a pair of lawn tickets to see Green Day with special guest Rancid next Thursday, August 15th at Hollywood Casino Amphitheater. Text in now to win free tickets to Green Day at 314-399-9646. If you can answer the following trivia question: what's the Olympic sport that I talked about in the junk drawer that I'm pretty sure I can maybe compete in? The reality is probably not, but what is that sport? If you can text in that answer to 314-399-9646, you'll be having a chance to go see Green Day next Thursday, August 15th. A limited amount of tickets remain for the show. You can find all the ticket details at 101ESPN.com and a bonus chance to register to win tickets to Green Day. We're going to jump into the Rewind coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN. Let's run it back with the Daily Rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Lou, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
Let's dive into the rewind here on the producer party. I'm Tanner Hendrickson alongside Matt Rocchio and Grant Francis. And guys, let's talk about the biggest story, I'd say, for the St. Louis Cardinals coming off of the weekend. One, of course, they really struggled, dropped 3 of 4 to the Chicago Cubs. But the biggest story for them was the fact that they lost Michael Siani for what is expected to be probably about 4 to 6 weeks as he strained his right oblique. Cardinals placed him on the IL yesterday and called up Victor Scott II. And it looks like he's getting the start today in center field against the New York Mets in this one-game little makeup game series, whatever you want to call it, before they start a 3-game set with the Tampa Bay Rays tomorrow. Rock, what do you think of the Cardinals deciding to go with Victor Scott? I know my guy BK wanted Thomas Saggese up here and rather go with Newt or Pham in center field.
I wanted a righty. I don't care what righty it is. I wanted a righty. Personally, I would have gone with Ivan Herrera. I think he earned it. I think when you look at Pages starting to really struggle defensively, I think there's no reason why Ivan Herrera shouldn't be getting a shot back up here at the majors, especially when you think about, we've had a lot of conversations today about what you can improve at the minors, what you can improve at the majors. When we had Benji Molina in the opening drive a couple weeks ago, and he talked about the arm strength thing, there wasn't a thing I took from Benji that sounded like Ivan Herrera's arm strength and ability to throw out runners is going to improve at the minors in a way that it wouldn't be able to improve at the majors. So if the big thing with Ivan Herrera is we got to get him more time because we got to improve his arm. Well, right now you need him in the lineup because you need a righty bat. So he'd be in the lineup, put him behind home plate and let him learn. Let him get that arm strength more dialed in at the majors level. I think it would make perfect sense to have Ivan Herrera up right now. But honestly, just bring up any righty. You have the second most at-bats in Major League Baseball of lefty versus lefty. And then you have the 21st you're 21st in Major League Baseball in batting average in lefty versus lefty, and you're right around 20th and even lower in on-base percentage, slugging percentage, and OPS. So you're not even good when you even do the lefty versus lefty. We're not even going to get into how many times they get. And so there's too many times where there's that situation. So I just want less lefty on lefty. So give me any righty bat. It can be Saggese, whoever you want.
And I know Grant wants to see Jordan Walker back up.
He wants to.
Yeah, been heating up over his last 11 games. He's got 3 home runs, 5 doubles, OPS over 1,000. I know, Grant, you wanted to see Jordan Walker get the call up instead of Victor Scott.
Yeah, I still think it should have been Walker. You think about any player that the Cardinals could have brought up in this situation. You think about their ceilings, and I don't think there's any player that has the potential ceiling higher than Jordan Walker. I think for a team right now that really needs a spark going down the stretch, they need a guy like Jordan Walker to come up with high potential and hit on that. Now, if he doesn't hit on it, then, there's only so much you can do. But if you do call up Jordan Walker and he does live up to his potential this season, all of a sudden you could see this team go on a hot streak. He might add an element and energize the clubhouse. I could see that happening. I think it's more likely that would happen with Jordan Walker than it would with any of the other possibilities that could have been called up, including Victor Scott, who still, I am excited to see how he performs during this call-up. But I think the correct move would have been going with Jordan Walker in this case.
Yeah, I don't mind the idea of calling up Jordan Walker. I still want to see a little bit more from him at AAA, just so we make sure that this isn't a flash in the pan and that his swing is actually corrected with the Memphis Redbirds. I don't mind the Victor Scott call-up, to be honest with you guys. I've said this all day. I like the idea that you're sticking with this idea of remaining strong up the middle defensively. Contreras behind the plate. Granted, they got to go more to that and quit this splitting with Pedro Pages as much as they are doing. You've got Masyn Winn, Donovan's good at second base, and then now you've got Victor Scott in center field, who I think is your best alternative to Michael Siani, compared to Michael Siani in center field now that he is hurt. I don't think Lars Nootbaar is an above-average defender in center. I don't think Tommy Pham is that either, but I do think Victor Scott can be. But my problem isn't so much of this roster decision, it's the ones that don't follow it. I do think their roster construction right now is really hamstringing them because they don't have that right-handed bat that you talked about, Rock. They don't have that bat that Grant was talking about with Jordan Walker. They need a right-handed bat. That's why I think you need to make a move with Saggese, or if they want to go to Walker. I don't know where his playing time would be at this point. point, but they do need a right-handed bat on the bench. I'd like to see Sajasi for Crawford's spot or Herrera for Crawford's spot.
Okay, this might be crazy. I know we talked about that it wouldn't necessarily help them, but if the Cardinals said we need to get righties on the bench, and the way we're going to do that is actually not hurting our veteran, our leadership in the locker room, because that's so important, and we're going to actually send down Nolan Gorman and bring up one of the righty bats instead. If that happened, I know it's a low chance, but I just want to throw out this hypothetical. Would you agree with it, and would you be pro? Just trading out a lefty that's not doing much for you right now for a righty who could.
Yeah, I'd be in. I would. I think they need a right-handed bat to come off of their bench, and that's why I don't mind the idea of calling up a Sajasi and moving a Brandon Crawford off of the roster, or even a Vaughn or Herrera. That's Matt Rocchio. Grant Francis been doing a great job filling in today. Shout out to Andrew Marsh as well, as he came in for the first hour and a half of the show. If you missed anything from today's show, you can always check out the podcast page at 101ESPN.com. All of our podcasts are presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers, or you can go back and watch the stream on YouTube. Go to YouTube and look at 101 ESPN STL. Our studio cams are powered by the Air Alliance team. And hey, don't forget to hang out with Jamie Rivers, 101 ESPN, and Stella Artois this Thursday from 6 to 8 at Helen Fitzgerald's. Stella Artois is partnering with Hot Ones to bring hot wings and hot trivia questions to St. Louis. Come watch the festivities this Thursday as your winning teams from our prior trivia events return to compete in this Thursday's finals competition. Enjoy some free Stella sampling and your chance at attendance prizes while you're there. That's this Thursday, 6 to 8 with Jamie Rivers at Helen Fitzgerald's. Get more info at 101ESPN.com. Thanks for tuning in today to the Producers Party. Coming up next will be the Fast Lane here on 101 ESPN.